Ready to go, Mike? Yeah. I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Town Council to order at 6 p.m. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Here.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Here.
Councilmember Shockley.
Here.
Vice President LeBlanc is absent this evening. President Lima.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the event of an emergency this evening, those present can exit outdoors labeled in the back 1 or 2 to the front lawn of Town Hall or the back parking lot. We'll now move to meeting minutes from prior meetings. We have 3 sets. May 21st, open session, June 20th, executive session, and June 27th, open session. Madam Clerk, were we distributed June 20th?
No.
Okay, so those will have to be.
Tables.
So at this time, I will seek a motion to approve the open session minutes of May 21st and June 27th, 2024 as a block.
Make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley, second by Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yeah.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
And now we'll take a motion to approve the May 21st and June 27th, 2024 open session minutes.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Capaldi. Discussion. Madam Clerk, did you receive any edits?
Just the couple that you sent.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
We will now move to public comment on docketed items only, those items on our agenda this evening. If you'd like to make a public comment, please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Good evening. Just state your name and address for the record and make sure the microphone's switched on.
Hey, Roger Latour, I live at 6 Whitman Street. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm here to represent Kathleen Savino, who's handicapped. And I'm here to talk about the elderly exemption. Or am I out of that?
Nope, that's a
Nope.
docketed item. You can talk about that
Oh,
this
all
evening.
right. She met all the requirements before the deadline. I was here twice before the deadline, and 2 times I was told somebody would call here and go to the house to get her signature. And nobody ever called, nobody ever came to the house. And again, after we got the tax bill, I came back down here, and again, I was told the same thing. And nobody's ever come to the house to get her signature.
Yes, I remember received.
Yes, I
Seeing a
talked
note
to you a
about
couple
this.
of weeks ago.
Yes. So what was the resolution? Did you speak to the town manager?
I never did. He never called me.
Did he say he was going to call you?
You said he might, but I never, like I said, I never talked to him.
Okay. So as far as you're concerned, what was the last thing you were told by the town?
That somebody would come to the house and get her signature. And I believe that over there with the white hair is the one that said it.
Okay. We actually are on our agenda this evening, we have an update on those who had come forward. I believe it's about 8 individuals, Ms. Savino included, with respect to the tax freeze. And they're presenting the council with options for those who may have missed the deadline, but it sounds like you got everything in for the deadline.
As a matter of fact, she even had to get change her deed, which we managed to do before, about 2 weeks before the deadline.
Mhm.
And that cost her almost $600.
Okay. Ms. Broadbent, can you be sure to follow up tomorrow morning? Can you just connect with Ms. Broadbent, the assistant town manager, and share your number so she can call you, or if you guys want to connect? Thank you. Public comment from council chambers. Mr. Murray, I think I saw you going to get up next.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? All right. Luke Murray, 121 Hill Farm Camp Road. I'm here, I was compelled to come tonight because I saw some floatings around social media about a resolution 2024-66. And I just want to say up front, I'm in support of this. I lived in the town 40 years. I haven't been here my entire life. I'm older than that. I was able to escape for a few years. But this issue, as far as I remember, is going back a couple decades of the time I've been in this town. As far as the disruption of the departments, issues that have come up, management issues, tax collection, all of us talk about inefficiency in government and the redundancy of having tax collections in different districts, having redundant personnel. What came to mind as soon as I saw the social media post is, if not now, then when? If not you, then who? I applaud the council for taking this up. It's time. I understand that there are districts that function better than others. I understand there are districts that have lower or higher tax rates than others. But as far as I'm concerned as a resident, when I go dip into my bank account to pay the taxes, it all comes out of the same bank account. Same bank account I pay Town of Coventry taxes, and what outflow I have for whatever licenses I'm supposed to get and everything else. So I just wanted to cut through the noise on this. I understand about audits. I understand about finances. I have a good sense over tracking things for the last year that Dr. Savetti has things under control. I don't think that we're in a poor fiscal situation where we can't undertake a study of this magnitude and kind of get our ducks in a row to look at consolidation of the districts. I will express two concerns on that, on this resolution as a whole. One is the January timeframe. It doesn't say January of any year. I'm assuming it's 2025. That's 4 months away. And working in local government, understanding what's required and budgets and everything else, that is an aggressive timeline. And so I would highly suggest, and this is just from my background, that, I would think that a year would be more appropriate for something like this to get all the ducks in a row, line everything up. I'm more concerned about quality than getting this kind of shoved through. I understand the expediency, but well, I'll leave it there. And the other concern is who leads the charge. So those of you who've been on school building committees and other committees know that everyone gets in a room, they have full-time jobs, including the town manager. Everyone talks, people walk away, and then somebody's got to go implement and do things. And I'm assuming that might be the solicitor. And no offense to the solicitor, that's very costly, for one. But two, I truly think that it should have an in-house project manager who's tracking the variety of things that's likely to come up through this process. Like, somebody's got to be designated. Now, maybe the manager already has that and he doesn't need my advice on the subject, but I just want to make sure that, that's being tracked on, because I hate to see this effort fail. Because I've seen other efforts, including the comp plan, right? Get started, get out of the gate and crash and burn. So if you're going to start it, my ask as a resident is that this be seen through to fruition, that we see some end result. And who knows, maybe we'll actually all see a tax reduction to these efficiencies. So I ask everyone to keep in mind. And the last thing I'll say is to the community who's listening. When you think about fire, stop thinking about fire. When you look at calls for service, most of our calls for service are for EMS and EMT services. We have an aging population. This is critical mass because we can't service the older population in this town, or younger like myself, or in the, those aging medical issues. That's a real problem. This is a public safety issue. So I urge everyone to just keep an open mind on the subject and allow this panel to do their work and come back with solid recommendations. Thank you.
I think the green shirt was next, sorry.
Scott Copley, 16 Old Mishnock Highway, Coventry, Rhode Island. I'm here to talk about the resolution 2024-66. I am in favor of a commission being formed to talk about the fire districts, but I do have some reservations on how this resolution was written. The first one is that there was only one consulting group that did a study I talked to a few other cities and towns across the nation. They usually get 2 or 3 when they're going to do this to get a multiple of different kind of corporations in to see what's going on. The second part was the commission itself. There was no fire board members mentioned on it. I think at least some fire board members from each district should be on that committee. And the last but not least is this town council, it's an election year. It's going to go from 5 to 7. You're going to have 3 new members, could be 4, depending on how one of the races turn out. You're going to have either 3 or 4 new members. I would like to see this postponed till that new council sits and then reconvene to talk about this. And maybe they could add some quality or some other kind of things to it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the front. Just name and address for the record, please.
My name is David Lima. I'm actually representing my sister, Eileen Lima, who probably has talked to a number of people on this board. And it's got a lot to do with the fact that she claims, and I do believe her because I'm her brother and we were raised the same way. By the way, if I didn't say her address, it's 107 Fairway Drive. She claims, and I do believe that she received her tax bill last year. She did not receive her tax bill last year, and unfortunately this year she got sort of double whammy. So I'm here to actually represent her, just to ask for consideration for someone to speak with her at some point to kind of ameliorate the situation. She is in advanced age. I'm not going to betray her age, but she is much older than I am. And she does ask respectfully that, someone help her out. And that is what I'm here for. So I thank you for listening. And if there's anything that I can do, my name is David Lima. I do represent my sister Eileen, and hope we can come to some sort of resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Parenti, 8 Meredith Drive in Coventry. I'm calling about the taxes I'm here for. I called up the town hall the other day. It went up $2,000 and they said they never received my paperwork. I said, I never got it. I've been in the hospital in and out for the past year and a half. And I haven't been doing my own bills or anything. I have someone doing it for me. And she said, I never received any envelope for that. So nothing's been done and I can't afford another $2,000. They didn't give us, my husband was a veteran and they didn't do that. They didn't do nothing that they're supposed to give us. The brakes on 65 and over. So I need that to be taken up.
Okay. As I mentioned to the previous gentleman, we have it on our docket this evening. The finance director is presenting options that the council can consider for those 8 or so that, like yourself, who didn't make the deadline or weren't able to turn in their paperwork that were previously eligible. So we can't make a decision right on the spot for you at this moment, but we do have it on the agenda to discuss tonight.
Okay, at the end of this list tonight? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pearson?
Hi, Steve De Palma, 9 Highwood Drive, Coventry. I'm also here for the taxes. And I came a couple weeks later. And, when you get older, things happen. The boiler breaks, people go in and out of the hospital, doctor's appointments. And it was around the same time your federal income tax are due. A lot of things happened in that time frame. And there was a lot of rain and water and other problems. Now, did I come? I came late. Came a couple of weeks late and they told me, oh, you're too late. Well, I didn't get any younger in that time. You know, I'm the same person. I live at the same address. I was here 5 years ago with the same form they mailed me. You know what I'm saying? So I thought myself it was like a technical thing. Maybe you were doing like some type of audit or whatever, but I figured I was okay. I didn't think anything changed in my part. Now, I don't know why you called us all in if you're over 65 to prove that you're 65 or older. I don't know. Again, none of us got any younger. But anyways, I think it's an insult to us because I've been here since 1978. Not recent. I must have been here 5 years, since 78. So I've been going along with everything. So I'm just trying to state my case and hopefully you could do something for me. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't a targeting effort. It actually says in the ordinance for the senior tax freeze that there should be regular audits. It doesn't state how often they need to be, but there were actually folks that came in and said, I don't need to be on this freeze, or took themselves off, or we found that there were folks who didn't turn in any paperwork at all. We found in some situations, there are seniors who leave their homes to their children in deeds, and then the tax freeze stays with the deed even after the person passes away. So these audits will most likely take place regularly. The council needs to decide however so many years it'll be done. But this was the first time in anyone's memory here that an audit has been done for folks to confirm or reconfirm their eligibility since this was established in the early 2000s, I believe. That's not true. Yeah. I'm not sure. Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why did it revert back to the way it was? I don't know.
Because there's nothing in the ordinance that states that it can just revert back when somebody comes back after the deadline. So that's what we're working out this evening, because there's nothing descriptive or prescriptive around the audit, because it's never happened, that there was no foresight to how the audit parameters would work, unfortunately. And that's what we're here to figure out now and put in place. I apologize. I hear you and I understand. And thank you for coming in and speaking in front of us this evening. Mr. Pearson?
Sorry for being tall. Good evening. James Pearson, 8 Nicole Lane. I'm here to speak about the Fire Commission resolution that you have on your agenda. I'm going to echo some of the previous comments that have been made because I think they were spot on. First, Mr. Murray had a great point. There are a lot of steps to make happen what needs to happen. So I'll start off. I'm not against this proposal of starting a commission. I think it's a good effort, again, based on the struggles the districts have had over the past couple of decades. But to get from point A to point B is not going to take 4 or 5 months. To get from point A to point B is going to take a year and a half or more. I think to do good service to the taxpayers in this town, it might be better to give yourself a buffer, give the commission a buffer to be able to make sure this is planned out properly and executed in the right way and not rushed. Because when you rush, you make mistakes, things happen, taxpayers suffer. The other thing that was mentioned was about costs. This could be a very costly process. And I think before you even approve this measure, it would benefit you to understand what are the costs to run the commission. We talked about legal costs, but I think there's some clerk costs in there as well. Where is this coming from in the budget? Maybe it's a small cost, I don't know. But you need to understand that as your fiduciary responsibility. The third point I'd like to make, and my final point, is I'm very concerned with some of the wording in the resolution, particularly around the composition of your commission. You have a great paragraph in the resolution that talks about making sure you respect the OMA, make sure you expect ABRA, make sure you respect the ethics code and follow it. However, in the previous paragraph, you have fire department employees that are going to be sitting on this commission. you're inherently creating a conflict of interest. And I think not this council, previous councils have done a great disservice to volunteers serving on commissions and boards by not protecting them or not letting them understand what their ethics obligations are. So if we have fire department employees sitting on this board talking about what we're going to do with the contracts, there's a conflict, they're at risk of getting a complaint against them, which could be very costly. You can do better, protect the people on the commission, bring in fire district board representation. Those are the elected officials in each district. You should be having a voice at the table. That's all. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Any other members of the public in council chambers? Public comment on docketed items, those items on our agenda this evening? Public comment on docketed items on Zoom. Any members of the public who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hello,
evening.
Robert Heavey, 607 Weaver Hill Road, Coventry.
Go ahead.
And my first concern is with one of the background paragraphs of the ordinance, which talks about the infusion of funds to help with the fire districts and the accuracy of that paragraph. Because to my knowledge, being in this town since 1986, there's only been one loan made to a fire district for $300,000, and that loan was repaid. So I really question the accuracy of that paragraph and whether it should even be part of the ordinance.
Okay. Any other comments?
The other comment has to do with the makeup of the board and the financing. And I mean, you have the town manager and the finance director as members of this commission. However, from what I understand, those are two people that are very busy. And right now they're supposed to be helping produce the financial records that are delinquent to the town. And they haven't been able to complete all those. And now you're giving them another duty and diluting their time even more. So I would think that, you know, there should be some thought as to whether you want to dilute their time with this, or you should bring in, you know, more members, such as the, you know, fire board members, the more citizens. And I, for one, would volunteer to be part of this commission if I'd be taken. Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Any other public comment on Zoom? Please raise your hand to be let in and unmute yourself. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment on docketed items is closed. We'll now move to licenses. We have 3 before us this evening. Item D, I'll speak to in a moment. Item A, this is on pages 24 to 25 in your packet. Application for exhibitions and performances license, Western Rhode Island Civic Historical Society, located at Payne House Museum, 7 Station Street, Coventry, Rhode Island, for their Heritage Day event, September 14th, 2024, rain date September 15th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the license?
Make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Madam Clerk, are all the items in for this license? Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item B, new mobile food establishment license, Scoop Teas Ice Cream LLC, yearly license, 257 Shore Road, Westerly, Rhode Island. Do I hear a motion to approve the license? I'm sorry, motion to ratify.
Make the motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion. Councilman Pasqua.
There's a Wesley address listed on this. Where is this?
Because it's a food truck, so the person probably lives in Westerly. and
Gotcha,
does the
okay, this
business
is
out of
food-
Westerly.
okay.
Yep.
Mobile food service, got it.
Madam Clerk, everything in with this one? There's no further discussion. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item C, new victualling license, the Original Gentleman Farmer Restaurant, LQVA Incorporated LLC, change of ownership, 2405 Nooseneck Hill Road, Coventry, Rhode Island, per Rhode Island General Law 5-24-1. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Capaldi. Discussion, Madam Clerk?
Everything's fine.
Any discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yeah.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item D, the applicant has requested that this license be withdrawn. I would just like to place a letter on the record, the communication from the applicant that they are withdrawing. I'll pass, I think all of you have it up here on the dais. It's an email. Do I hear a motion to accept the withdrawal into the record?
Make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
We'll now move to report of other town officers and officials. First, we have Maria Broadbent, Assistant Town Manager, with discussion on improvements to town council chambers.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the council. Over the winter, we started to look at some of the options for use of ARPA funds and some of the projects that the council wanted to consider and staff recommended. And one was to give a little facelift to this building. The Public Works Department did a really great job of painting it. And now we're looking at the options for giving more elbow room because you're about to have 2 more members of the town council. So you need some more room here on the dais to do this over and to do the carpeting over. And to do the carpeting in squares, just like we did for the public spaces out in the lobby, so that when you have a stain in a carpet, you can just replace a 2x2 square and you don't have to deal with the whole thing. So, and in addition to that, looking at upgrades to the AV equipment, which Mr. Burgess can tell you, we probably could use those. So the total price for that is about $97,000 was the estimate that staff received. Those prices were back from January. So the Public Works Director recommends that we consider $100,000 to do the upgrades to this room, just to spruce it up.
Thank you. I had asked for Ms. Broadbent to bring this back up because we brought it up and I think only one council member emailed Dan with feedback on whether or not how they had, if they had any follow-up questions. So just wanted to get a sense from the council what they wanted to do about this. And I'd say, in my opinion, the most dire need is the AV. The microphones and sound system in here is in desperate need of help. Councilwoman Capaldi.
I agree with you 100%. We need that AV. If we had to choose between all the things that she just listed, AV would be first.
Councilman Pasqua.
When was the last time any major improvements have been done in this chamber? Any idea?
I don't know, but I imagine it's quite some time ago because all of this woodwork matches a lot of the woodwork and stuff that some of it I think was done by when the school had a VOTEC program. When they were doing carpentry work, they built all the cases, display cases and did a lot of the trim and they haven't had that program for a while. So it's been some time.
Technology's come a long way. And a lot of people now, over the last few years since 2020, are using Zoom
Mhm.
to watch our meetings, and we need these to be able to communicate with them. So, I mean, I think it's needed. We've had a lot of issues with it. and Plus, we're expanding. We're having to share microphones when we stuff the dais with people. So we don't even have enough as it is. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea. It needs to be done. I'm all for it.
And I think Mr. Brogy was scrambling right before this meeting to make sure that we were actually able to broadcast the meeting because um we lost the internet connection. So it's a regular basis that these guys are just trying to make it work.
Mhm. So it looks like here the recommendation is a combination of ARPA federal relief dollars and revolving capital funds.
That's right. And the use of the ARPA funds, we need to commit certainly by December for how we're going to use them.
What's the pleasure of the council on next steps?
Do we make a motion to budget for 100,000 to the public works director for improvements to council chambers? Is that accurate, appropriate?
I'd recommend that you, if you're inclined to accept the recommendation as made in the memorandum dated August 27th.
Make that motion.
All right, we have a motion from Councilman Pasqua,
I'll second.
second by Councilwoman Capaldi. Any further discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pascal?
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley?
Yes.
President Limo?
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett.
Thank you.
Moving on to update from the solicitor, Stephen Angel. We will take his list of reports out of order and are you talking about item D first?
Yes.
Okay.
Talk about I beg your pardon, we're going to talk about,
Just make sure the
The-
mic's on.
we're going to, it is.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the solar array first, which is item E. So just to bring, I'm sure that as you drive down Arnold Road, it looks like we have a new cemetery with, looks like Arlington, but it's not. So I was out there last Friday for a walkthrough with the construction crew and a representative of Amoresco, who is constructing the project. Presently, we're on target roughly for sometime in January for electrical transmission to be. I think that the site will be in line for a group visit from the council. It's probably appropriate sometime in October to do a tour. Obviously, you'll have to convene as a council meeting, to go do it as a group. My recommendation would be that not discuss business while you're out there, but merely go on a tour. But we can handle that when we get to it. So as you can see, this is sort of a before and an after picture. The after hasn't happened yet. Panels, like you can go to the next. So this, this slide, and this is available to the public, will give you an overview of, what the cost of construction is and who's involved. And, you've seen this before, but it's just background like text. This is the same sort of timeline that we talked about. It looks like if you go to the bottom, commercial operation, we are on target to begin operation and begin to receive rent sometime in January, February timeframe. Go to the next. So just to give you a sense of what you're looking at, so that if you start from left to right, what you're seeing is on the left, this is the top of the landfill. And there's a series of gravel roads that they've had to put in so that they can move machinery around without tearing up the top of, the covering on the landfill cap, essentially. In this process, we've been out there with GZA to make sure that all of the seams, things of that nature, are tight. We have had some issues not related to the construction, some discoveries of some seams that were breached. They've been fixed. And this just gives you and we're gonna do a drone flyover. We've got some drone footage that we'll show in a few minutes. So this just gives you an idea of the site improvements. You're looking on the right hand, what's created in the middle are the actual solar panels that waiting to be installed. They were delivered a bit early because of some supply chain issues that the contractor wanted to avoid. So they've been on site for a little bit. Those are the blocks in the lower right-hand corner. They come in 2 different weights, and you'll see a description of how they're constructed in a minute. Next. You've all seen the work being done on Arnold Road with respect to the poles. That's Rhode Island Energy working with Amoresco to install new poles in transmission equipment. So this is an example of how they build the little foundations made out of stone, and they're for the concrete anchors for the actual panels. It gives you a sense of how they do it. They actually have a form. They pour it on top of a very high quality landscape mat, which then sits on top of the cap. And then on top of that, they put the concrete anchors that just sit there. And those are the anchors. And then we're going to see the video. So this gives you a sense of what it looked like. I want to say these were taken last Friday, if I'm not mistaken. There's been a bit more, well, there's been a lot more construction since then. It goes together pretty quick.
I know it doesn't look real.
You can see Arnold Road to the left in the background. The gravel is so that the trucks can turn around, the special vehicles on rubber tracks, so that they can turn around without tearing up the tar. So you can see we're pretty much on progress. What happens next, once all these things are installed and in place, electricians come in and begin to string the racks together and install the panels, hook them up to the grid. So we're on target.
How many are there of those things?
Well, if you'd like me to tell you, get you counted. Questions on the solar project? So I'm happy. Yeah, sure.
You just remind the public about the fiscal benefit to the town. We agreed to that a while ago, so just
Yeah,
remind folks.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but as the council will recall, prior to November of 22, there had been a letter of intent that was signed between prior council and administration relative to this project with respect to the actual amount that you'd receive in the transmission. Mr. Savetti here. All the way in the back, it's a good place to be. And I'm not putting you on the spot, Bob. What's the lease payment? Is it 120,000 a year? So it's around 120,000 a year. We were to receive less than that. The original letter of intent, I thought, was something like 18,000 units per, and I think the agreement we have now is 21,000. So things were improved since the letter of intent was signed. We can get you the actual
Yeah.
numbers, but
I think that's overall, not just the town, it's the whole group.
we'll get you that. But also to be considered too is that the town is a 60% owner in the PRP group that owns the former landfill and manages it. And this company for the next 25 years we'll be paying 50% of the cost of the insurance policy relative to the cap. And that's huge. So took a little while to get this project underway. So the PRP group has been funding the whole thing. But this year was the first year of the 50% payment on the insurance policy. So that helps to defray the cost of operations. As the council may know and the public may recall, there were funds set aside to sustain the operations of the closed landfill for decades. And the goal is obviously to preserve the core amount of money so it, goes on a bit longer than that if it can't, before the town would have to pay. We'd have to redo the deal. So that's where we stand.
Any further discussion from the council? All right, where would you like to head next?
So next, I want to talk about the land trust next, if I can. That's D. So when I first came here, among the many discoveries was I received a call from planning and said, are we ready for the closing next week on a piece of property that the land trust intends to purchase? And I said, we know nothing about it. So let's talk about it. Long and the short of it was the purchase was made, but it did raise a larger discussion. And, this council has had other things on its plate in the course of the last 18, 19 months. But this one is, I think, making its way, to somewhere near at least the bottom of the A list of things that deserve some attention. You have a designated group of people who behave as a land trust, okay? The land trust legislation in Rhode Island came into being in the late 1990s. It's state legislation that is essentially an enabling act that allows cities and towns to have a land trust. Coventry reacted in a couple of ways to that legislation. First, by appointing a group to be constituted as a land trust, and then to appropriately have a designated budget line item for monies to fund land trust acquisitions. But what we didn't do as a town was we never formed a land trust. There is no ordinance in this town that speaks to the existence of a municipal trust. We need to do that. How do I know that? Because every single property that the land trust has purchased is not held in the name of the land trust because they don't exist as a legally cognizable entity. The town holds title to those properties. So those properties really need to be transferred to a legally constituted land trust. With the council's permission, I respectfully request, that we be permitted to draft that the series of ordinances necessary and get it before the council. And then I've been talking to assistant town manager who has a very good sense, and I'm sure with some more research we'll have a better sense of the properties that should properly be put into the land trust. And certainly, she'll draw upon the collective knowledge of those sitting on the land trust, but those properties should be put in the land trust. This issue comes up again for another reason. You have on your docket this evening a request from the land trust to purchase some land. I certainly have no problem with that. The purchase of land is always subject to a title search. Since we will be the owner of record, we want to make sure that, the title is free and clear and, we're not buying another dam. We had that concern with another piece of property that the land trust had looked at early in the term, but ended up not being a problem. And so I was asked the question by planning whether or not there could in some way be hunting on land trust property. Well, first of all, it's not land trust property, it's town property. And second of all, it would become a question of insurability. So in speaking with underwriting at the interlocal trust, there's a couple of things. First of all, those activities would be covered under our all risk policy with a very huge caveat. We need to put an ordinance in place as to the requirements of how hunting on town land would be regulated or it may, in all likelihood, not be a covered activity. So for the time being, I do not believe that the council or town government should permit hunting on town land, bows, arrows, projectiles, however somebody hunts, it should not be permitted. It's not, it's insurability of that activity right now is really in question, given that we don't have the proper regulatory scheme in place to regulate that activity. So I raised that with the council. It was raised with me by some department heads in town. And that's the conclusion. I wanted to bring that to the council's attention. So as you know, if you contemplate moving in the direction of a municipally authorized land trust, you would necessarily have to address hunting on town property in one aspect, into a separate aspect. What sort of activities would you permit on land trust property? Even though the land trust, you know, is formed to recommend the acquisition of land, it's part of the town. You folks maintain regulation of those lands and what occurs on them. So I raised that, of course, within the confines of, you know, open space, state law with respect to open space. So
Any discussion from the council? Councilman Pascal?
Does this affect any past business of the land trust? Any recommendations that council acted on for purchasing properties?
as long as it's a purchase, no. I mean, however, that the property is held in the name of the town. So somewhere there has to be a list of properties that the land trust requested that the town, you know, expend funds to acquire. Because every time they do, they come to the council and say, hey, can we disperse from this line item in the treasury? So there has to be a list someplace. I say it has to be a list someplace in Hope, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And then those properties should necessarily be transferred into the name of the land trust.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you just grandfather or if you should move all those deeds over or titles over.
You'd have to deed it from the town to the
Okay.
trust.
I feel like that's gonna be a little bit deep because the town can purchase and sell property. Land trust holds it, it becomes a trust and they hold on to it. It can't be sold. It's supposed to be part of.
Agreed.
So some properties were acquired as a trust, some were acquired to maybe be moved later on. So I,
You don't know which are just town and which are acquired.
right, yeah.
We've gotten our arms around bigger things. I don't.
Yeah.
We've gotten our arms around bigger things, so I don't think that's gonna be.
Do
it
any
today.
members of the council have objection to the solicitor drafting those ordinances around the land trust? Hunting and municipal watch? Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, where would you like to go next?
So let's talk about Center of New England, which is C. So there's been a lot of activity, visible activity in Center of New England. You see that the boulevard is being reconstructed. The so-called wetlands crossover, which I've discussed in public before, is nothing more than a connection over some wetlands. As you come in from the Hopkins Hill area, you cross over it, you know, where it dead ends now, the boulevard would continue and go all the way out, you know, through its logical endpoint in East Greenwich, where it is now. Oddly enough, had a conversation with someone today that the entrance to Center of New England, which says Center of New England, is really in East Greenwich. But anyway, it would connect the road from end to end, which is a huge public safety benefit. That's underway as we presently speak. Planning is actively working with developers and others to assess the capacity of the sewer line that exists within Center of New England Boulevard. The receivership invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to map out what's called as-built plans of that sewer infrastructure, which is actually private, okay, and exists in Center of New England Boulevard, presently owned by the receivership. And then that dumps into a line that is, then carried all the way down to West Warwick. Much of that infrastructure that exists in the roadway, public roadway, was also constructed by the Cambio Group 25 or more years ago. So with the prospect of the amount of development that's being proposed, the concern is whether or not that line is going to have the capacity. I know it sounds funny, but it's not so funny. What happens if everybody flushes their toilet all at once? Will the pipe handle it? The other thing is that there's a part of that infrastructure that exists on the receivership property that is a forced main and pump station, because you don't get to gravity until you get into the public road. So the question, becomes, we're looking at some of those capacity and the health of that infrastructure issue. I know that the receiver spent quite a bit of money to ensure that there was redundancy in that infrastructure that did not exist before. That's being evaluated, I would suggest, by engineering and the planning department. What questions can I answer for you? There's a lot of activity there. There's a lot happening before planning with respect to parcels 2 and 3. That's moving forward. There's excavation on those parcels, which is nothing more than site prep work that's being done. There are applications that I am told are on the way with respect to parcel 1, and other activities with respect to parcels 4 and 5 as it relates to the Department of Environment. And DEM is involved in all of this. So,
Councilmember Shockley.
So when you say there might be a sewer line capacity issue, that's for projected development, like based on what people are intending to do on the site, or?
we want to make sure that in the course of reviewing plans, planning had raised the issue, and I'm working with the receiver on that to confirm. Look, it's another situation. I know it's an old song, but there are no records. There were very few records on Center of New England. The town did not do a very good job of keeping records 25 years ago with respect to what was done there. And in working with West Warwick, they only have so much information with respect to this. So, it's really was Coventry's responsibility, as the road exists in a private road within the town of Coventry. So, it works. We know it's in good shape, so I've been told, but we just want to make sure we have a capacity issue.
So I guess
Not immediate.
this might be a lack of understanding on my part, but is it the capacity at the West Warwick end? Like, we aren't purchasing enough capacity, or the
no.
pipe's just not big enough to be able to support? And if that's the case, just you talking about the road right now, for the first time in a very long time, we're redoing this road. Are we going to have to tear it up and fix the sewer line?
It's not a weed problem. It's a receivership problem.
But
and-
even still,
Mhm.
like, they're fixing the road right now, and there's a chance we'll have to pull the road up and fix the sewer line.
Well, I'm not saying that that's the case, okay? Because I don't know as I stand here, but what I can tell you is, for the first time, the town of Coventry is getting out in front of some issues. Nobody else thought of this issue until Doug and I stood there and said, okay, we've checked everything else, and it's charming that we have as-built plans, but how much gray water and brown water can you put through this pipe all at once?
So I would
Because-
like to point out again, the town of Coventry is not paying for this road.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. It is not a town of Coventry road. What I can tell you, okay, there's been a lot of discussion about what the town of Coventry's, position is in the receivership. What are we going to get from the receivership? Okay. Plainly stated, the town of Coventry was never properly in a position to recover anything in the context of this receivership. No tax liens were ever made. No tax liens were ever perfected, and no timely claims were ever filed in the receivership, period. Okay, so the $3 million that was on the table went up in smoke when one purchaser did not purchase the entire receivership interest. What we've been able to achieve since then is $5.5 million worth of improvements to that infrastructure that does nothing more than increase the value of all the remaining parcels that are in Coventry. That's parcel 1, parcel 2, parcel 3, parcel 4, parcel 5, 6, and 8, 7 and 8. Okay. So, and to Councilwoman Shockley's point, if you go back 25 years, some of these parcels, particularly some of the Coventry parcels, were not being considered for residential purposes. Okay. So you're going to have some peak usage with respect to that pipe to think about. So I raised the issue with you in full disclosure. It's something that had come to our attention within the last few weeks. So here we are. And I have begun to work through this issue with the receiver. We're not going to let them out of the receivership if we've got a capacity problem. They're going to take care of that. It's not our problem. So, other questions?
Councilor Pasqua.
I've been back there. I noticed that they are cutting through to connect the road. Have they indicated any timeline at all on completion for that connection to Hopkinsville?
We're looking to be done with that before the bad weather sets in. Yeah. Because obviously there's certain development that cannot occur adequately on 1, 2, and 3, because there's a branch that comes off of that crossover to get to those properties.
Any further discussion on this item from the council? Okay.
So I'm going to go to A first, which is the ratification of the dam operating permit. That's in your packets. It's labeled as 67 because it relates to dam number 167. Dam number 167 is in fact the dam at Flat River Reservoir and Johnson's Pond, which the town acquired on June 28th. So the dam is registered, but the operation permit and its appendices is something that needs to be filed to operate the dam. So this operating permit was filed. And you'll note that on the signature pages, I had the town manager sign in his capacity and the council president on behalf of the council to sign on the council's behalf. We're very careful to make sure that no individual liability attaches on that. It attaches to the town. You'll also notice that with respect to the appendix, there are certain pieces of it that have been pretty fluid since we, no pun intended, since we took over the operation of this thing, particularly with respect to some mapping and things of that nature. That information has either been provided to DEM, I can represent that to you, or is on the way. For example, anybody operating a dam is supposed to have a dam operation manual. In the, well over 150-year history of this thing, there's never been a dam operation manual. So, we're working with our engineers to put together a rudimentary dam operation manual with respect to the infrastructure that's in place now. And then we'll move on from that as things improve within the gatehouse. So, and we'll get you that appendix when it's, completed. But, since this was submitted to and respectfully, I request your ratification with respect to the operating permit itself.
Do I hear a motion to ratify the dam operation permit?
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua, second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
So I want to talk now, if I may, about their application. So, first of all, many of you were informed, well, I'm sure all of you were informed by way of social media last week that was it last week or the week before? I can't remember, but anyway, that the repair application was approved. I have absolutely no idea how the Pond Association knew that it was approved. Didn't come from me, didn't come from my office. So, you know, the fact that it's out there, there's no reason to talk about it. It got approved. Doesn't mean you stop work the next day. We have to wait for the department to issue a specific license, if you will, for us to be able to do those repairs. We still do not have that yet, okay? And we're not sitting around waiting for it to be ready to go. So I wanted to tell you how we got to this point. As you know, it was probably in the third, I want to say the second week of July, that we submitted our repair application to the Department of Environmental Management and finalized that. It took them, and it's a review process. I will tell you that there are no fewer than probably 9 people on their end who are in these meetings, represented, you know, the legal office, dam management, compliance, right on down. Everybody's, you know, got a finger in the pie, and rightly so. And they came back and they had some questions. They had some other issues that they wanted addressed that I had addressed with Mr. Choppy, who's in charge of compliance. And I said, I think the best way to do this is to have a call. That was a Friday, Thursday, Friday. We had a call the following Tuesday. I knew what their concerns were, had sent them on to the engineers. We had a conference before our meeting with DEM on the Tuesday. We turned around on that Thursday or Friday and supplemented our original application. And I apologize because, like anything else in life, we all work out of files and notebooks. I left it on my desk, so I'm working. But there were things, you know, that they wanted a bit more information on, you know, for example, in things that I had some concerns about. For example, when you get permission to go in a wetland to repair a structure like this, you know, you have to build your way into the wetland, get permission to do it, and have drawings and tell them how you're going to do it. I know it sounds stupid, but you have to. And then you have to also give them the shop drawings that you're going to use to restore the area to its natural state. Well, given the fact that, you know, dams are not exactly, you know, like a granite building, I said, wouldn't it make sense if we augmented our plans and had a more permanent access point that we can leave there for purposes of public safety apparatus and also for purposes of, you know, maintenance. Public safety wouldn't have to ask permission to go into, say, but for the town to go into the riverbed or into a wetland area to even retrieve a piece of brush, we need to get permission. But it's better to have that access point there built before you actually need it. So the application was augmented for those things. We also looked at different methodology for repairing it. The good news at the end of all of this, we're looking, and what they want us to look at is not getting into that riverbed again, okay? They want us to go in once. They would prefer that we go in once. We don't know that it will only be once, because once we effectuate the repair on the spillway and the dam face itself, the only way to know that the repair is successful is to make sure, you do a dye test, okay, but only after you bring it under hydrostatic pressure, which means you bring it to spillway. We're told by the engineers that 1 week after the repair is effectuated, pardon, we'll be able to bring it to spillway. Okay, 1 week, that's what I was told. They'll do the dye test and we'll see where we stand. Right? At the same time, dive inspection is probably about 14 months overdue with respect to the lower level outlet gates. As you know, there are 3 lower level outlet gates. The gates themselves are made out of wood. One of them had been stuck for a period of time, stuck in the open position. That change that's been dealt with. But we had to contract with a qualified dive inspection team to go down and document what's going on there. That's underway. That was something that we had talked with the engineers about and had them draw up the specs and what we needed to do for that reporting. They've done that. Those divers will also be clearing the trash rack, which by our estimates hasn't been cleaned in probably a couple of years. So the trash rack that sits in front of the gatehouse is it's full. I know that some of you have been out there, look at this and seen it. And you don't have to be a Phi Beta Kappa in gatehouses or gates to realize that you've got debris washed up against the front of the gatehouse. So that's being, and why is that important? Because we need to ensure that those gates are going to function as designed when we draw down or seek to keep it drawn down while we effectuate the repair on the masonry face of the dam in the spillway. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the terminology design build project, okay? When you build your house, you get a set of plans, you do the engineering, you apply for your permit, and your plans to construct your structure are pretty static. They are what they are, they're on paper. These plans could change depending upon what construction personnel and the engineers find. There's a large pile of rock that's been stuffed up against the dam. The plan is to remove that rock. That rock is going to be put back, as best we can tell, in the places that it came from. And there'll be a thorough inspection of the face of the dam. The goal is to do pretty much all of the work that needs to be done, rather than get into that riverbed again. There are a variety of reasons for that. The gates have been worn down significantly in their operation over the last 4 years, that we know. Just to refresh everybody's recollection, those gates are really to be used in only a couple of circumstances. This dam and its spillway is designed as a matter of water management to send water over the spillway, period, okay? The gates are designed, if you're in a drought situation, okay, if you're in the summertime and there's a drought, the town by state law must maintain a certain amount of stream flow downstream to protect the natural habitat that's in the water and around the water. So there needs to be a minimum stream flow that's headed downstream, not just from the lower level outlet gates, but as you know, the spillway moves around that and then they combine one stream flow, if you will. So however that happens, water's got to get downstream. So in a drought situation, they're open. They also need to be operable in a situation like this, where we know we're going to be in that riverbed, we're going to coffer dam and do some things. We need it to be as dry as it can be to really have a good solid repair in that area. So if you're going to have a storm or something like that, you're going to need to make sure that those things are open or you're going to wash out your repair. So, that's just two scenarios, but the gates are not to be used to manage the water level. That's not how these types of dams are supposed to be utilized. So that's what I can tell you. Please, whatever questions you have. And by the way, I can tell you that a specialty contractor has been vetted to do the repairs. I'm assessing contract documents as we speak, and hopefully, depending upon availability of materials, as soon as the letter comes in from DEM, we'll have a better sense of when that contractor can get out there and begin the work.
Councilman Vasco.
Has there been any indication as to how long these repairs will take? You mentioned Coffer Dam and what have you. So, I mean, are we talking weeks, months, years?
No, it's not going to be years, but it's not going to be years. But we don't know it's behind the pile of rocks. That's the issue. DEM wants that looked at first. You know, and then the general repair, you know, the immediate repair is to take that, you know, the capstone, if you will, and what's behind that, make sure that that's properly routed for the long term. Okay. And then as to the face of the dam itself, there are some stones that, for whatever reason, have become dislodged. They need to be put back into place and chinked into place with smaller stones. It's not like a stone wall, and I know that some of you know this, but for the public, it's not like a stone wall where, you know, you see this pretty masonry line. That's not how this dam was originally designed, and it's worked well for 150s. It's designed to weep water, because if you wall off all the water, the hydrostatic pressure builds up in the riverbed behind it, and you will blow it. There's no question about it. So, you know, for the public, they may be sitting and saying, well, what about the Hoover Dam? Nothing leaks out of the face of that. Yeah, but that's a concrete structure, and they have relief valves that send the water around the sides to reduce the hydrostatic pressure. This is done by, you know, just genius, you know, 2 centuries old genius type of engineering. What may happen as they repair the face of this, however, is that they may decide to have some dedicated weep holes, you know, with some type of piping. That decision hasn't been made, because they're going to do dye tests before they do anything. One of the things that I can report is that the engineering studies that have been done do not show silting coming through the face of the cracks in the face of the dam. Why is that? It's like clean water's coming through the cracks in the face of the dam. Okay. It's when you see particulate that's coming through like fine sand, that means it's sucking in back of the face and pulling that material through the face. That's a hydrostatic buildup that potentially causes blowout. We don't have evidence of that right now. And it's been that way, by the way, since I've been involved here. So hopefully that doesn't change. One of the things that will be evaluated while they're in the riverbed is whether or not they extend the man-made spillway across, and to what degree. And we may not have a lot of control over that. DEM may just say, listen, you're there, we want this done. Okay. But just to be reminded, we are presently under an order to do this. We stepped into the shoes of someone who created this debacle. So, you know, we want to get it done. We don't want to be there any longer than we need to be. But as I said publicly last week, there will be a summer, next summer on Johnson's Pond as things stand today. Okay, that I am relatively certain of, and that will become obvious to all of you as you know more about the repairs. So my goal is to bring, once we get underway, is to bring GZA in and have them do a full act, you know, to do an explanation, if you will, of where we are. Try to dumb down some of the science.
Any other discussion from the council on this item? All right, on the final item in your report.
So as you know, there've been ongoing meetings with the Auditor General concerning, you know, the general status of, you know, the 22 and 23 audits, and as they matriculate to the 24 audit. We've had monthly meetings. I've been in all but 2, you know, where this is concerned. Initially, there were concerns on the town side, certainly with respect to, you know, the upheaval in the finance department here and other managerial concerns. And, you know, there are concerns on the school side. You know, you folks budgeted $600,000 in a deficit reduction, you know, to ameliorate $600,000 in 2022 debt or deficit from the school department. You know, the issue is, you know, and it's related to the town side. Okay, they're a big piece of the budget on this side. The concern now is the cumulative deficit on the school side. You know, if Mr. Savetti wants to speak up, but unless I'm mistaken, that cumulative deficit, through 24 could look something like $7 million as the crow flies. Okay, that's a huge number. It's a huge number for a town this size. And the concern that I have as an observer, the number changes all the time. Every week is a new number, but we're getting to a point. I'll give you an example. The 22 financial statements were set to audit, okay, set to issue. And obviously, the 23 statements come right behind them. Without those statements, you have no bonding, okay? You have a bond like to issue to do some improvements to schools. The town's financial advisor has advised that the best time to issue most likely will be sometime in January. Okay, that's what the town has been told. So last week, Mr. Savetti, thank goodness, is reviewing the 22 audit on the school side, and he notices some accounting for, FICA deductions and other deductions relative to pension accruals. They failed to accrue the pension. There was no accounting for the pension accrual on that side. That's a $700,000-800,000 issue in 22. That in the view of the auditor is material to the audit, and they need to account for that in the audit. It just rolls forward. Okay. Now, the Auditor General, as we discussed about, the budget budget discussions this past year, they're interested in the council funding a deficit reduction plan. Well, how can you have a deficit reduction plan if you don't know what the number is? And how can you fund something if you don't know what the number is? We're going to get to the point here, folks, that you won't be able to issue bonds if you can't issue a financial statement that the markets have confidence in. So, I raise the issue because in my observance and in my experience, this issue's reaching a critical mass. So I point that out for your edification. I know that Mr. Savetti will add some more color to that, when he speaks about it, but that's what I have. Other questions on that?
Any discussion from the council on that item? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Savetti? Oh, item F. All right, do I hear a motion from the council to take the agenda out of order? Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
A second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Okay, resolution 2024-65, approval of Coventry Land Trust to acquire 2 properties located at 120 Town Farm Road and 0 Trestle Trail for the sum of $115,000.
Good evening. Doug McLean, Planning Director. I'll be very brief. I think there's materials in your packet that give the background. Essentially, we were in front of the council in the fall of 23 asking for the authorization to move forward with appraisals on 3 properties. Soon thereafter, one of the properties was sold into another private purchaser. Through the properties, we did move forward with the appraisals. The land trust, who does serve as an advisor to the council on these matters, with the council having all of the financial responsibilities to purchase it, did engage with the sellers of the properties to ensure that they were aware of the appraisal, that they agreed with the appraised value. They did reach that general agreement. The land trust does think that these properties still represent great value for the price points that the appraisals came back at, and still recommends moving forward with the purchase of those 2 parcels. Again, it's the Mende property and it's the McGuire property. that are further detailed in the staff materials. Josh Chase, who is our planning technician and serves as the direct staff liaison to the land trust, is available tonight. I know that there's a few land trust members that are here tonight if there are questions on the specifics of the properties, but I'll leave it there and just if there's any questions, we're happy to address.
Discussion from the council, or at least to get discussion going, do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
I motion.
Motion by Councilman Capaldi. Second by Councilman Pasqua. Discussion from members of the council. Councilwoman Capaldi.
I know the Mendy property and I read your report and it's excellent and I think it's a good purchase.
I give the credit to the land trust and the other staff. Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Further discussion from the council? I appreciate the planning department in particular with the help of our planning technician to continue to move property acquisition forward. One of the biggest themes that I think every member of the council hears here in Coventry as we continue to grow is preservation of open space and maintaining some of our rural character as we continue to grow. And that's what this purchase does. I appreciate the effort that went in as well in terms of price and value to the town. And can you just remind folks how this is funded so they know?
Sure. Yeah, essentially, every municipality, to my understanding, gets some proportion of the state transference tax that occurs on all property transactions. Coventry has a certain amount of funds that come to it from the state. Those funds have to be designated for these types of open space and property protection efforts. So these properties fit that metric. They're being purchased for the preservation of open space. And so we are allowed to use the state funding mechanism to purchase these properties.
Any further discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yeah.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes,
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
thank you. I'm gonna go back up to reports because I know we have some senior members of the community that are waiting to hear the discussion and report from Mr. Savetti. So if you could come up to the podium for your report, please. Yeah, yep. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Councilwoman, Council President, members of the council. Bob Savetti, Director of Finance, and here with Karen Montini, Tax Assessor. We just wanted to, again, discuss some of the items that took place relevant to the tax freeze, where we're at. Provide additional information to the council and just try to get some direction on where we go from here. You know, so just listening to some of the commentary earlier, you know, our goal and our intent, as you said, was to try to enforce an ordinance that's been in place. And to the best of my knowledge, hasn't been enforced for years. It hasn't been followed through. So that's something the council asked us to look at. And that's how this whole process started. So we're looking to clean up something that existed in the town for years. We totally understand that nobody's getting any younger. So once they hit 65, they were on there. But there's different things that could happen throughout the process that they should have came off of the tax freeze. So that's what we were trying to look at. So you have this in front of you, but just some highlights of bullets. So again, the 2024 tax roll, which we currently is in, has approximately 2,672 properties that have frozen taxes. The 2025 tax roll will be adding another 316 properties. And then as of today, we've already accepted an additional 186 applications for residents that want to go on the tax freeze, which would not be frozen until 2026 roll. So those are the documents you see here on the table. These are the applications that the tax assessor's office receives daily, has to go through the applications And we're trying to maintain those files. So a lot of the documents, when we went into the records to review the files and to start the process, the audit of the tax freeze, there were no documents in files. So we had files, folders that were empty. So there was no documentation that the person ever even initially signed up for the freeze, but yet they were getting the freeze. So that situation with the process we went through has been resolved. We have complete files. Everybody that's getting the freeze, we have documentation for that. You know, properties on the tax freeze resulted in savings to the taxpayers of approximately 3.25 million in taxes on the 2024 tax roll. So that's if we looked at what their tax bill would have been versus what they actually paid in taxes because of the freeze. There were savings passed through to the taxpayers. Again, about 3.25 million. Again, the whole process, we mailed out 2,934 letters. As a result of the mailing and recertification process, we removed 284 properties from the freeze. 223 of those properties were removed for no-show. So the people didn't show up. That could have been because they never received the letter, as they indicated, or just they failed to show up. Since the beginning of August, obviously this has been going on for a while, but we've been trying to keep track based on a meeting with the town manager. We received approximately eight individuals came in to complain that they never received a letter. You know, various reasons. We have a couple individuals that brought in documentation, could show where they were hospitalized. They simply couldn't get here, had no record of a letter. We had about 26 calls complaining that they were removed from the freeze and wanted to know why. Some indicated that they received a letter, but ignored it because they didn't think it applied to them. So there's a wide range of, you know, why these 284 properties came off the roll. We had some properties removed from the taxpayer when they should have received several years, which should have come off several years ago due to death or whatever, you know, changes within the property was transferred. So I believe within the ordinance, you know, people need to realize this, that the town does have the ability to go back 5 years and recover back taxes along with interest for property owners or interest from property owners that were inappropriately receiving the tax freeze. At this point, we haven't taken that step. We haven't moved forward because it's really, you know, we'd have to sit with the solicitor to read through the details of the ordinance and see if that's really a process we want to go. So that's basically the background, just going through some of the items to consider. And you do have a copy of the ordinance, which was left for you in the packet. I'm sure you've all been through it, especially with all the calls and everything you've been getting. I'm sure you're familiar with it. But just a few of the items you can go through. So during the process, we had property owners call us and tell us they were out of town for the winter and could not get back to fill out the paperwork. So right off the bat, we had people telling us that, hey, we're currently in Florida. We leave in December. We leave the first week of January. We're not back till May. So based on the ordinance language says you have to be in your residence for 9 months out of the year. So right away, those individuals didn't qualify. However, after we told some of the people that, they did come back. So they came back in March, filled out the paperwork, then flew back to Florida. So that's one of the policies that's in the ordinance. How do we enforce that? You know, so as you can see, when we look at some of these instances, it's a tough ordinance to police, basically. But we're trying to do the best now. We have property owners that get the freeze and also relieve income tax relief. So when we're looking at some of it, you know, one example, we have somebody, their tax bill should be based on current taxes, should be $8,000 a year. They're paying about $970. So again, when we talk about the income component where you do have income relief, that's also something else that can be manipulated, right? As an accountant, I know there's ways that you can play with when you're retiring. You can manipulate your income where you're living off savings and those type of items and you're not showing. So there's some balance there where is it income relief or do you look at maybe a net worth component? So different things to consider. You know, the ordinance also discusses many things that have not been enforced and are difficult to police, such as residency requirement, as I mentioned, multiple units on a land where it says if there's multiple units on one property, that's fine, they can receive it, but those units can't be rented out. They're supposed to be occupied by family members. How do we know that? You could have a son, a daughter, a relative living there, but they're paying rent. Technically, that's not eligible. right? Property that's not supposed to be more than 2 acres. That's never been enforced in the town. And currently, we haven't gone back to do that because there's a lot of things that entails to try to get that in place. How do we have to now try to split and go through? And that's on some of the items that Harry will go through. Just one other bullet point here. So when we talk about the tax freeze also includes an elderly exemption of $8,000. We have a veterans exemption of $9,000. So those are some things when I get to in a moment, when we talk about possible next steps or things we could look at. I think we also want to address those issues as well. But the other document that you have where it's titled freeze exemption discussion, I'm just going to have Karen review those a little bit to just talk where you can see some of the concerns we have or some of the things that make it difficult to enforce. Just, again, I want to make sure everybody's understanding the process. This wasn't something, I think as Council President mentioned, this isn't something where we had a targeted attack. This is something of enforcing an ordinance that's been in this town, I think long before any member on this council sat in the seat you sit in. So we're just trying to comply with it and say, okay, if it's difficult to comply, what can we do going forward? And how do we rectify maybe some of the situations where people rightfully, shouldn't have come off? Maybe they didn't receive the notification and go from there. So if I can, I'll have Carrie just go through some of these items.
Okay. So I went through the ordinance line by line and just wanted to point out a few things because it is sort of onerous on the assessment office and on the taxpayer. I think this ordinance. Firstly, it says it must be owner occupant. We've had instances where a person has owned the property, lived in another town, paid taxes on the property in Coventry, but didn't live here. And that was, we have to sleuth to find out, hey, were they actually living here? Were they on the voter rolls? Were they this, were they that? It used to be a lot easier because we received motor vehicle registration data from DMV when we had the excise tax, but now that that's been phased out, we don't receive that anymore. So I can't even look up your motor vehicle registration and determine, well, where are you registered to? Not everybody votes. Not everybody is on a voter list somewhere. So it's a difficult thing to determine always occupancy. I'll let you guys go through this on your own as well. So I'm going to skip over some stuff, but the 9 months of every year is utterly impossible to police. It's just, there's no way we can do it. We can ask you to sign a form saying, which we have done. The people don't read the form. I'm sorry. It's clear on the application. And it's just the honest people suffer. What else do we got here? As Bob mentioned, 3 family units, no rentals. I don't know what's rented, what's somebody's child is staying at or grandchild. I have no idea. The land issue is a big issue. The ordinance is written in such a way that only 2 acres of land can be frozen. This has, as far as I know, never been adhered to. To try and pull that in now, we would need to cross-reference tax administration system, the tax canvas system, find all the freezes, how much land they have, value 2 acres in the year that they were frozen, and then try and figure out how to break it out in the tax administration system. It would be a very lot, but that is how the ordinance is written. You're not supposed to have more than 2 acres on the freeze. What else? There's also property to be included under the exemption, alteration, or improvement of the property. So what the ordinance states is, The exemption shall be terminated if the property is altered as to character and use. So I get the and use, but it could be going from a 2-family to a 1-family. It could be, you could be adding a second story onto a ranch house. I mean, I just don't know who determines what terminates it. Then the proof required in the application is problematic. And I'm just gonna leave those in your packets for you to read the rest of it. It's a lot of just my thoughts.
Councilman Capaldi.
I've received a lot of calls. Thank you guys for talking to me several times. There seems to be a lot of lack of clarity in the ordinance, so I think that we should get together. I don't know how it's done, but get together and try to review this and make some distinct direction for that ordinance. But my bigger concern is the lack of communication to the residents. You guys even said this is the first time in years that you are telling the residents that we need you to come in and reapply. Granted, it says in the ordinance that it should be every year, but no one's done it for like 20 years. So a lot of these people, since they joined, they only applied probably once. So my concern is, and what I really do want to look at is set some kind of process on communication. I just want to use the example of Rhode Island Energy. We all have it. We've all been seeing promotions to change your accounts, or because you're not going to be able to get into your account, radio, television, mailers in their bills. So they do it over and over and over again. It's not one mailer that they could, in theory, never have received. And I think the majority of the people in this room are the people that are saying that they never received the letter. They're not saying, you know, any other reason. That's the reason. So I think that if we can set a process moving forward on a lot of these things, on how to communicate to our residents, especially if they're elderly, or some woman over there that said that she wasn't even paying her bills, we need to send it out more than once. One and done doesn't work in communications, no matter what field you are. I know that in my field, I probably would have been fired from my job if I did communications in one channel. It's all the eggs in one basket does not work. So that's what I want to look at. Mrs. Lima, thank you for coming. And I look forward to talking about some resolutions to help you guys.
Councilmember Shockley.
I think I'm on a similar line to Councilmember Capaldi. Not on the communication necessarily. I think we put it out for the first time in a long time. It was a good idea. We have, looks like over 200 people who probably are no longer going to be getting a tax freeze that they probably were the home was no longer eligible for. I think a lot of changes do need to be made to how the ordinance is written. I feel as if the way it's written currently, there's too much room for confusion, people making sure they keep their tax freeze. You know, the example you gave me of the person who came home for a weekend to sign this form, well, they still don't live here 9 months a year. They came home for the weekend to sign a form. But I don't know if tonight, with what's on the agenda, we were supposed to discuss changes to it, or simply discuss whether or not, as far as people who were on it, we can see still qualify or can't prove do not, should we put them back on the freeze that they were on before it came off? So that was mostly the discussion I was expecting for tonight, is to discuss just that key topic for this year's situation. And if we're supposed to also be speaking about changes we'd like to make to the ordinance overall, we could do that too.
Just briefly, I know you had your hand up. My comment was going to be, we are not going to solve the litany of issues with this ordinance tonight. My request would be that the finance and tax office write ordinance amendments that they'd like to see or additions for the council to consider. Help us empower you. I don't know if there's other towns that you like the look of some of their, but that's what I would prefer to see. We're not the experts here, and I'd like to hear what you'd like as tools in your bag to better do this. And with respect to the 10 or so seniors that have been in contact with town hall frequently with respect to getting back on their freeze and reverting back to what they had, my preference would be to consider a resolution that does a one-time grace period to allow for those folks to get back, those 10 or so folks that have said they have shown that they still qualify. So that to me would be the purpose of this, is hearing tonight from the council if they'd like to consider a resolution at a future meeting with respect to the one-time grace period. Councilor Shockley.
So I don't know how far we can put this off, because I think people are falling into when they have to pay their taxes. And I want to make sure that those people aren't continuously under the stress of whether or not we're going to be able to move forward with this. I would say I'd want to go beyond the 8 to 10 people. And, it looks like we've had about 36 of our residents reach out about this issue. I would like to look at those residents. And as I said, if it seems that they still qualify, if they don't qualify, they don't qualify. But if it seems they still do, then, I would like to make sure we can get them the correct tax bill before their bill is due, I believe, in October. So they only have about a month to be able to pay that bill without having a late payment.
We have 2 meetings in September. I mean, it's feasible, but I see your point. Councilman Pasqua.
I'd be in favor of a resolution that would give people a little bit more time to submit documents to show if they were entitled to the freeze, and maybe adding something in there that would relieve them of interest and penalties if they qualified if in that time period. And just, quick, my quick piece on the ordinance. I know you addressed a lot of issues on it. The state Title 44, Chapter 3 of the state has elderly tax freeze language in it already. It just exempts Coventry, West Warwick, Bristol, and Exeter. So, maybe we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It talks about income and everything else. Maybe we see a couple of different options for ordinance changes, or we look at just going with the state's model and not being exempt to them instead.
One moment. So,
I think we could certainly get a list together, taxpayers that are here this evening that have commented. We do have a list going. Kerry did mark down this evening if we had somebody that wasn't already on the list. So we can certainly compile that list, get it out to the council, letting you know what essentially we'd be looking to abate their taxes. If we do have their paperwork and they still qualify, then we would propose that as an abatement of their 2024 tax roll taxes, so the current tax bill, and that adjustment could be made. We could, as based on the list we have, we could certainly get that for the first meeting in September. We can provide that.
okay. And then, in my opinion, this is the one time only, because this is the first time we've done this. But once we institute some of the tactics that Councilman Capaldi suggests for communication, when you're hitting a household multiple times, the next time this is done, then that kind of has to be it. We cannot do this every time. So, unfortunately, yes.
The way the ordinance is written, they are supposed to reapply, give a new application yearly. And what we have thought of so far is that we can put a little, like a buck slip or a little mailer in with the tax bill, saying if you are on the tax freeze, you need to reapply. We could even include a application if we needed to.
Good. I hope everyone reads their tax bill.
Well, it would be separate from the tax bill. It would be a separate piece of paper
Okay.
saying, if you are on the senior tax freeze, please remember you need to reapply prior to January 31st.
Yep.
And then if I can just, adding to that. So different things when you look at, the back of the basically memo that was provided where it talks about possible next steps. One of the things we talk about is, do we continue to maintain the annual certification? Or do we revise it where we say recertify every 3 years so that we can do it more on a rotating basis where we try to break out, based on last names, your A through H or whatever that is, you do it this year, and the following year, you get on a 3-year rotating basis. Because anybody that stopped in town hall, I'm sure the residents that may have, come when we had to go through the certification process, from probably that first week in January until the end of March, we had a line going from the assessors counter out to the hall. We were using this room many days so people could sit. So, you're getting 3,000 residents coming in to recertify, to do that on an annual basis. You really be looking to try and increase the staff in their office, because that's really all they focused on day to day. So some of those things, I don't know, we can certainly work with the solicitor, see how we can change certain things in the ordinance, even if we don't have everything resolved at this point, but to try to get that in place for January is something I think we should address.
Okay, so it would be great if we could, obviously, will take some time, but we'd like you guys to tell us what tools you need to empower you on this ordinance, what changes or additions you need, or if something to the merit of Councilman Pasqua getting unexempted for that state law. And then we'd like to see what a resolution should look like for those 36 some, yes, Mr. Angel.
So as a matter of process, we can look to the next General Assembly term, okay? But that's not going to come soon enough to solve this problem. So certainly a resolution can be done for, immediate effect in September, first meeting in September. And probably most likely first or second meeting, if we can get a draft of the changes that you want, and we can sit down and get that done, get that introduced, and have it in effect for, November. We've got to follow the steps in the charter, obviously, for posting, reading, first reading, and then debate. So, even if we don't get all of it, we can take steps in that direction. And I think you're probably right. I think it's an excellent idea to have rotating sections of the alphabet, whatever the period of time is really a policy decision, but that's a good idea.
Councilman Pasqua.
If we were considering going towards the route of getting unexempted from the state law and just following what most other cities and towns are doing, the ordinance, if we had to do something now, could we write an ordinance that just mirrored the language in a sense? And that probably make it easier to get to the General Assembly, knowing that we passed an ordinance and it's.
No, in terms of the state legislation, we would ask for a bill to be put in, have it pre-filed in December. I'm sure I bumped into Senator Raptakis. I don't know if he's still here. But I'm sure your state delegation would be willing to, put in a bill. The council would pass a resolution immediately in January to support that and ask for immediate consideration. I won't speak for Senator Raptakis, but in my experience, they consider town bills and send them right to the floor immediately. It's not like it's a committee issue. So he can guide us on that, but that should happen pretty quickly, I would think. Correct. Yeah.
Further discussion on this? Seems like we've provided some direction here. Okay. All right. Director Savetti, do you have any, actually, why don't we do this since Ms. Martini's up here? We go down to Resolution E 2024-64 Tax Assessors Abatements and Additions for January through August 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Make a motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Shockley. Are you prepared to speak to this? Okay.
Okay, so we had abated taxes from the 2023 tax roll in the amount of $4,666.12. Abated So far on the 2024 tax roll, we have $26,604.04 as shown on the list that you've been provided. And then we have additions on the prorated tax roll 2024 for $146,380.38. And the 2023 supplemental tax roll in the amount of $88,041.15.
Discussion from the council? Councilmember Shockley.
Why were there so many additions this time around?
So the prorated tax roll is for new constructions. They're for construction that was finished after January 1st. I can't put that on the 2023 tax roll. I have to wait until I have a new tax roll open. Because January 1 to 12/31 is the time frame for the 2024 tax.
Any
You want-
further discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua. Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
3 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Right, thank you. Mr. Savetti, do you have anything else to add with respect to the Auditor General update on the heels of Mr. Angel's comments?
Yeah, so again, we did have a meeting with the Auditor General this afternoon. As Solicitor Angel mentioned, we were anticipating receiving the fiscal 22 audit the end of last week, beginning of this week, but in light of something that came up with the omission of the accrual for pension related to teachers' payroll that get paid over the summer, the auditors felt they could not issue that report because, as the solicitor mentioned, it was material to the financial statements. So they've held that up. The school department, after the meeting, was going to be researching the item, trying to come up with that final calculation to get it over to the auditors so that they can do what they need to verify it, update the financial statements. But then in addition to the financial statements, we have the Uniform Chart of Accounts report that gets submitted to RIDE. That has to get updated. And then we have, let's get to the MTP report, or the transparency report from Department of Revenue, that also needs to get updated. So I'm hoping that the school department can provide that information by the end of the day tomorrow. If that's the case, we're optimistic that the 2022 report will be issued hopefully within a week or two at the latest. Because again, the changes just need to get pushed through. But again, because we're waiting for the state, they need to do their pieces. It's going to depend on their availability as well. Relative to the, deficit reduction plan, obviously, we don't know an actual number at this point. So, we've seen various numbers, especially for fiscal 2024. We saw earlier in the year, we thought it was going to be a break even. Then it was up to a 600,000. Then it was 700,000. Then maybe it was back to break even. As of about a week and a half ago, it was projected to be maybe 4.5 million. Discussion I had late this afternoon with the school department, they're thinking it's more maybe to a deficit of 2.3 million. But again, I know the superintendent was supposed to be here this evening. There was some confusion as far as whether it was on the agenda, not on the agenda, actually making the presentation. So with school opening tomorrow, because they didn't have a definitive number, he did not attend this evening. He did contact me, and again, because they're not sure where they're at, he wasn't comfortable providing any information at this point till they can get a final number from his finance team and then present it to the school committee. And then he said, he obviously would be willing to attend the September meeting to provide an update. So again, we're working hard on it. We'll be submitting to the council for approval of hiring the auditors for the next 3 years. We went out to bid a 3-year engagement. Our current auditor, CLA, was the low bidder. They were ranked by 3 individuals within the town, including one from the school department. We made the recommendation based on the ratings provided by the Auditor General's office. We had made the recommendation that we'd be allowed to maintain with CLA and award a contract to them. The Auditor General has approved it based on their review of the documentation. So as I said, in September, we'll be coming forward to the council to hopefully have you approve them as the auditor. We'll share with you the bids that were received, get a resolution together. But if they are approved, the intent is to have them in here late October, where they're going to be picking up on the 23 audit, going right into 24. And fingers crossed, we can have them both issued so that we can go to bond in January.
Councilmember Shockley.
So I'm not a audit expert, but I feel like pension accrual would be something that would be in every year. Like this wouldn't be something that was in one year's audit and not in the next year's audit. So I'm wondering why our auditor didn't pick it up.
I can't speak to why the auditors didn't pick it up. I could tell you based on my experience as an auditor, there was a time when the state required that all pension contributions, even on teachers' payroll that get paid over the summer, the state required to be paid by June 30th. So all I can imagine is that at some point it was being paid on June 30th, so it was never accrued. It was basically paid in advance of knowing the final payroll. And when the auditors just kept going on, it got missed in subsequent years. Something the auditors, as soon as it came to my attention meeting with, the business manager and his department over at the school department, we talked to the auditors. They went through their work papers. They could see where it was accrued on some of the grant funds, but it wasn't accrued in the general fund or the school unrestricted fund, which obviously is the largest component. So that's why they'd rather get it corrected at this point. But you're right, it's probably been off there for several years.
Councilman Pasqua.
Are we missing any deadlines or anything on this project with the bond? Because sounds like we have a moving target here, trying to understand the finances.
Yeah, I don't think we're really missing any targets. The one thing that we had talked to our financial advisor about a week or 2 weeks ago, and we were hoping that we would have, like I said, the 22 financial statements, because as soon as we get those, we can apply to Rybeck, Rhode Island Health and Ed Building Company Corporation. We can send an application to them to get the ball rolling, because it does take at least 90 days. So we were, hoping we can get that application in now so that we can get the ball rolling. So then once we have the 23 audit issued, we can go to bonding. The financial advisor said there's no way we go to bond without having both 22 and 23 completed. He would also like to see us have 24 completed, or at least in, significant stages of completion when we're going to bond. So we're optimistic if we can get those done, we can go to bond in January.
So, we're talking about a possible deficit of 2.3 million. When we go to bond, I mean, I just imagine subprime lending to the town of Coventry for this. I mean, like, how does that work? I mean, it's got to impact us significantly on our rates and everything else.
Yeah, I can't speak for like Moody's and the bonding agencies, how they're going to rate us, but I think, what you have to remember, they're going to look at the town overall. And I think the town, town's general fund is in pretty sound financial shape. You saw what we projected our surplus to be for fiscal 24 on the town side. I think they're really going to look on what more of a corrective action plan. What are we doing to correct the problems at the school department? How are we going to pay off that deficit and make sure that it's not continuing going forward? So that I think is going to be the key thing. And we're going to have, a lot of information that's going to have to be provided in the offering statement that deals with that. If we've been running deficits for 4 straight years at the school department, what do we do now to stop that? And that's also the Auditor General's, main concern. So the Auditor General, I believe, left it in today's call that when we're going to meet again the end of September, he would like to get an update not only on where we stay at 23, 24, but he'd also like to get a feel from the school on where they stand for 25. Even though we're only going to be 2.5 months in, he stresses that it's important that not only on the town side, but also school side, we need to be monitoring budget actuals so that we're not caught by surprise like I think we all were this year.
Thank you. I have concerns about continuing to fund a deficit reduction plan that has a number that's not congruous or continuously verified as the same. So I don't know what your professional opinion is, but until I don't see how the payments we're making are gonna make any difference if the deficit continues to swing wildly in either direction. So, I mean, I don't know how we proceed from here. We have to figure out a way to work with the school department to get an accurate number on that deficit. I'm not sure what other path to take, because it feels like it's been the last year or so where we've heard a different number between FY 23's deficit and now FY 24's deficit. So we got to figure out a path forward, because it seems like it's just shoveling water uphill to pay on a deficit plan that's almost millions smaller than what's projected.
We can, I can certainly get back to you. Obviously, I'd like to have more of a concrete number, at least, to see where we're at. We've obviously, the council approved the budget for this year that has that, amount in there. So we have been transferring it each month. We pay the school department, semi-monthly. So we do send a portion of that deficit reduction to them. I'd like at this point to continue to do that till we can find where we're actually stand, and then address it and say, okay, do we stop it at this point till we can redetermine what that amount should be, and getting ready for the budget season for next year, how we're going to deal with it. But also as part of, we have to remember part of the deficit reduction, and we discussed this during our meeting today. It's not only the town maybe having to come up with finances, but the school department having to come up with cuts. And I know they made significant cuts this year. They did a lot to try to get in line with the budget, but it really has to be on both sides, right? I think looking at the number we would need to budget, because again, deficit reduction plan has to be over a 5-year period.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, if they are even if it's 5 million to 7 million in that range, you're looking at over $1 million per year. So, just to go to their deficit reduction, that doesn't deal with any pay raises or any operating costs that they need. So we need to get some hard numbers. I will say that, the school department, the town manager, myself, superintendent, and the school finance director or business manager, we've been meeting, I believe, twice a month, pretty much on a regular basis. There's an open communication. The school department, just as they're digging further and further through it, they're realizing that their fiscal 2024 budget simply wasn't a good budget. They find in a lot of things that they don't know why it was budgeted the way it was. Unfortunately, the former business manager or finance director is no longer there. And they relied a lot on his information, but that's where I think really, similar to here, I say accountability for myself and the town manager, the fiscal 25 budget's our first real budget where we've been here for the whole year and everything. We're accountable for it. I think the fiscal 25 budget is the one that we really have to stay on top of the superintendent and the school business manager, because this is the one that they're fully accountable for. They were the one that developed the budget, and they need to monitor the budget. So I think I'll continue to provide to this council, monthly report budget versus actual, excuse me. I believe we need to get those same reports from the school department.
Is there an understanding from the department that our ability to go out to bond and the type of lending that we do get is contingent upon getting this number correct?
They know the time frame we're in. And I think, them drilling down to the details they're drilling through right now is helping to ensure that we're going to have a correct number. I met with the school business manager and his assistant, I don't know if assistant controller, whatever it's titled, but we met back on the 16th of August, and we went through detail the accrual and what they were trying to calculate. And, we talked about some items that I had concerns with, some items that, we're just trying to understand. And they've been working on that for the past couple of weeks. So I think, I'd like to think that we're going to be at a good point by the time you see the June 23 audit, although it's stale. I think that's going to be a true number, because as you may recall, when the auditors did their presentation, both on the town side and school side, we do have some deficits in some small, other funds, special revenue funds or capital project funds, that those are going to get closed out and transferred. So when I mentioned that the school department may be in a deficit of about $6 million cumulative, that includes approximately $2 million that they had deficits in different side funds that there's no revenue stream. You know, I can charge expenses to a capital projects fund. If there's no way to fund those expenses, at some point, somebody's gotta cover those bills.
Mm.
So I think we'll be in a good position. I'm comfortable with getting there.
Any further discussion on this item? Okay, lastly, the impact fee document, please.
Okay, so the document you had in front of you, first I like to say, you know, at the very top of it, it talks about legal authority. That's not meant to be that it's gone through our solicitor or have any legal opinions on this. It's just the heading that was given to this section that basically says, where does the development fee or the fair share impact fee come from? What gives us the ability to charge that? So you can go through all the language there. It provides information from our capital plan, various departments where we see capital in the future. So the next 5-year plan, what we anticipate. Again, for the various departments, whether it's public safety, parks and recreation, human services, education, public schools, sewer upgrades and expansion. But really on the last page, so Roman numeral 6, where it talks about the proposed impact fee. So again, the whole reason we looked at this, we're trying to say, okay, we currently charge an impact fee of $5,854 per residential unit. That impact fee, going back to 2001, as far as I could see, was $7,596. Now, a couple years ago, prior to me being here, maybe prior to some of the council members, it looks like that fee changed from the $7,596 went down to $5,854. I can't find anything to know why it changed. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say Councilmember Shockley.
Yeah,
This
just
is like
to
a,
give some color behind that, because I believe I'm the only person up here right now who was on the council at the time. That came before us very soon into the new council coming on board. When we saw that it was lowering, we asked the town manager at the time to go back and get updated numbers, because there was no way, based on how our town had been financed up until that point and the need of our schools, our municipal buildings, that there was, that this could be reduced. It just made no sense. And everyone we spoke to who came to us as the experts told us that this is what we had to do, that we couldn't change this. It was unethical, different things like that. It's a few years ago, so I can't say I'm saying anything verbatim. But the council at the time had no comprehension of why this would reduce. And yet we're told from every direction that this was what the new impact fee was based on our 5-year plan. So that's a synopsis. The fact that it's only going from what it was before 2021 to $8,000 now is a little surprising to me. But I think that this 5,854 number never made sense to anyone on the council.
so what's the next step if the council would like to entertain the increase?
Yeah, so I think at this point, this is a draft proposal. I know the town manager, he had, mentioned to me that if the council wanted, he could obviously get some comparable rates of what other communities are charging. But I think, no matter what other communities are charging, I think you have a detailed capital plan here that shows many of the improvements that are needed in the town. I know since I've been here, that this town council's been aggressive in trying to deal with some of the infrastructure and things you have going on. So based on, again, the numbers that Councilwoman Shockley just mentioned, we're looking at these capital projects amount to approximately 72.2 million. And just looking at the formula, which I'm assuming the town manager had from previous years that was completed by the town of Coventry, you factor in an interest rate bonding component. And as you said, this brings us up to about an $8,000. We'd like to see the impact fee rate increase to $8,000. So I would assume if the council is okay with this draft, you want to review a little further, we could move forward with trying to propose a resolution. I don't know if it's resolution or an ordinance. An ordinance that could get presented in September, go through, as the solicitor mentioned, the proper channels, get it read, open for public meetings, and then get approved where maybe we can implement new rates going forward.
What's the council's pleasure on introducing an ordinance to Councilman Pasqua.
I think I do want to see neighboring cities and towns impact fees. I mean, I want to remain competitive to bring in commercial to the town. I don't want to price us out of the market. And, you know, that's looked at. So I think it's important that we do have that information when we consider our number for an ordinance.
Other discussion? Councilwoman Baldy.
I agree with that too, because this is kind of like in a vacuum. I want to see what other towns look like.
Again, we could certainly try to get that information. I would just mention too, though, you have to look at, you know, although it's nice to look at other communities, you have to look at what their investment's been in their capital over the years versus what Coventry's investment been in capital. So, you know, another community that's been keeping up on their capital, whether it's the buildings, roads, you know, just general infrastructure. If they've been up on theirs, they may have a lower fee because they don't have the projects that you have. So I think we need to compare apples to apples. Don't only look at the rate, but look at their capital needs versus Coventry's capital needs.
Yeah. I'd like to see this on a September agenda. The construction is not stopping in Coventry. So, and the need in our public infrastructure is not going away. It hasn't been invested in for the better part of 2 decades. So, if we could get started on that ordinance for September, that'd be great. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Savetti. For those in the room, thank you for your patience. I know most of you are here for a specific item. Unfortunately, I usually try to jump around, but everything on this agenda, there's somebody sitting in the audience for, so I'm trying to be respectful of everybody's time, so I appreciate it. Mr. Levesque.
Good evening, Joe Levesque, town engineer. The town manager has tasked me with looking at a long-term solution for a drainage issue that we have on Station Street in the area of 269 Station Street. There's history with flooding in that area. The town has installed some low-cost solutions. Unfortunately, none of them have been effective. We've installed dry wells in the side of the roadway. We've also installed driveway berms, and unfortunately, none of them have been effective. So the next alternative is to look at the installation of a catch basin in Station Street, and we would tie it into the existing drainage structure, which is in the intersection of Highwood Drive and Station Street. Unfortunately, it's about 600 feet south of this location. So there would need to be a feasibility analysis put together. I've asked PAR Engineering to put this proposal together. It initially came in at a little over $36,000. And in speaking with them, I've got it down to a little over $31,000. There's a lot of investigation that goes into this analysis. There's a lot of engineering, and all of it is necessary in order at the end to come up with a solid recommendation of if this is feasible. If it is feasible, how much is it going to cost? I can't really reduce this any further because all it would do, it would affect the recommendation at the end. So everything is, at a bare minimum as far as all the tasks that are in the proposal. The area is known to have shallow ledge, so they are proposing to do probes every 100 feet in Station Street. So there's 6 of them that are proposed. There's some survey that needs to be done. The existing drainage system that's on Highwood Drive and Station Street that needs to be evaluated. The watershed that feeds, the contributing watershed that feeds that drainage system needs to be analyzed to see at what capacity that system is already at. Another analysis is that the watershed that feeds the area where we're having the drainage issue needs to be analyzed so we can determine how much water we're adding to that existing system. And then once all of this is put together and we have the information, then they can put together a preliminary design, and then based on that design, they can put the cost together.
And this is not something we would seek additional bids on, this, just because this is on the state.
They're on the
MPA.
MPA, and they also are doing work for us with peer review, power engineering.
So what gives you the sense this is the best bang for our buck?
I've looked
I-
through what needs to be performed, the work that needs to be performed, and it's in line with
Okay.
with what's needed.
Right. Councilor Capaldi.
Hi.
Hi.
So this gentleman is in my district, and I know this has been going on for a long time. I don't want us to keep spending good money after bad for all the things, the Band-Aids that they have been putting on. We need to do this the right way, and that 31,000 that you got it.
31,850.
We need to do this. He's known as the lake house. To be able to put a boat with a motor on it in his yard, it's a little concerning.
Councilor Shockley.
So just to make sure I understand, I've heard a lot about this issue as well. This is a study to look at one solution and
Yeah.
see if that one solution will work. So what if they determine it won't?
We don't have a plan B. We've tried plan B and C, which were low cost substitutes for this plan. I think this has always been the plan. It's just going to be very, very costly, and this analysis is going to determine how much. They've tried the dry wells on the side of the roadway. Due to the shallow ledge, they fill up very quickly. So that was a solution. And then berming the driveways to try to keep the water out. Problem is the water collects in the roadway, and when cars drive by, it creates almost like a tidal action, and the waves go over the berms. So they end up in the property. And then we're also creating an issue with, now we have ponding water in the roadway, people coming down that hill. So that's not good either. It's essentially, this area is in a bowl. The water has no place to go but into the adjacent lots where the people are experiencing the problems. The water just has nowhere to go. So I'm hoping that if the catch basin can work and we can tie it in, then we can get rid of that water from that low-lying area.
And how much have we spent on previous attempts at solving for this?
I would say tens of thousands.
Okay, so we've already,
Yeah.
this is at least investigating a solution that you feel should have been the first solution if we thought we had the funds for it.
Yeah.
Why did,
Yes, Councilor Capaldi.
why didn't we do this before? Why was the decision not to do this?
So I think a lot of it reverts back to the ledge. That's what the probing is going to do. It's going to give a ledge profile to see exactly how much ledge needs to come out based on the profile of the proposed pipe. Removing ledge can be very costly. And I think that might be the reason why there's no drainage right now in front of this, existing. It might have been because of that reason. I don't know for certain what happened in the past, but it's worth taking a look at. And, if hopefully we can get it to work. And if it can't, then I'm not sure what the next idea is going to be. Besides building a basin, there's I don't know where else to put the water.
Mhm. So my request would be that a resolution be drawn up that also indicates within it funding sources. We need to know, this is not something we had budgeted for. So in my opinion, a resolution needs to come before the council with who you'd like to award the bid to, or recommend the award of the bid, including kind of fiscal note information within the resolution of where it's recommended from the town manager and finance director in terms of funding this.
Okay.
Does that sound all right with members of the council? Okay.
All right, great. Thank
Any
you.
additional discussion on this? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have our new library director who we're all getting to meet, Lauren Walker. Thank you for your patience.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know me, hello, I'm Lauren Walker. I'm the new library director. I'm here tonight because the library has received a $130,280 grant from the Champlin Foundation. We'll be using these grant funds to completely renovate our restrooms, employing the services of Coletta Contracting Company Incorporated. And they're on the state MPA, so that's why it didn't go to bid. And basically, we're doing this because we want our library to be a comfortable and welcoming place for all. Our 3 restrooms, 2 public and 1 staff, are in dire need of renovations. The building was built in 1979, and while minor improvements have been made along the way, the bathrooms are outdated. With an average daily visitor count of 200 people, our restrooms are very heavily used. We had 11,000 more visitors in fiscal year 23 than the previous year. In addition, while the space is ample enough for a wheelchair to fit into, the doors are heavy and are in need of ADA operators to open the doors automatically. This renovation would include replacing all the fixtures, flooring, and receptacles, and will make our facility more accessible, hygienic, and inviting to the public. Renovations are scheduled to begin in September, and we'll be staggering them so that there's always 1 restroom available to the public. We'll send people across the hall to town hall in the meantime. Hopefully we won't overload the town hall restrooms too much doing that. And we're just looking forward to upgrading our restrooms and making our space more welcoming and comfortable for our patrons and staff.
Thank you. Discussion from the council? Councilmember Shockley?
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is our first time meeting. I think I own Overdue Fine or a book.
We're fine free now, so you probably don't.
Who I've had it for a while. My son's trying to read his summer reading book. How did you get the grant? Did you guys apply for it on your own? Did our grant writer apply for it? I'm just wondering.
We applied for it on our own. Yeah, through the Champlin Foundation.
That's fantastic. I think it's great that you guys are looking for other resources to take care of these, if not one time, very few and far between expenses. And I think the ADA compliance is an excellent addition to a public library. So I'm really glad that you guys are taking care of that feature.
Thank you. And I also can't take full credit because the previous library director, Megan Whedon, did submit this grant application. So I want to make sure credit where credit is due.
Do I hear a motion to ratify the contract or contractor agreement?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley,
A second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. I guess I'll take the roll.
Meeting over.
Councilman Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Councilman Pasqua.
Yeah.
And President Lima, yes. 4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. The motion passes. Thank you. Great to
Thank
meet you. We'll now move on to resolutions of the council. Item A, sewer tie-in application, resolution 2024-59 for 866 Tyoke Avenue, Coventry, Baja's Fresh Grill. This is on pages, the sewer tie-in applications are on pages 55 to 78 in your packets. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua.
A second.
Second by Councilman Capaldi. Any discussion? I don't know if the applicant's here and wants to speak. Hi, you're all set? Okay. If there's no further discussion, Hillary, please take the roll. Councilman Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
Councilman Pasqua.
Yeah.
And President Lima. 4 in the yes, 4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Meeting adjourned.
She's like, gladly. 59. All set. And we also have sewer ordinance waiver request, resolution 2024-60 for 1017 Tyoke Avenue, Coventry, Susan Caddick and Dawn Caddick, executor. Executor, sorry. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Motion by Council Capaldi, second by Councilor Shockley. Assistant Town Manager, did you just want to speak to this briefly? This waiver request? Or?
I can speak to it. Joe Levesque, Town Engineer. This is kind of a unique situation. Actually, the first one that I've dealt with since I've been employed by the town. 1017 Tyoke is a residential home in basically a commercial district. It's in between, I want to say Fantastic Sam's and Century 21 on Tyoke. It is set back from the roadway. I want to say about 250 feet. It's elevated. There is a stub for to tie in sewer to the main. The home currently has an operable cesspool, and the homeowner would like to install a OWTS in lieu of tying into the sewer main. And the reason for that is there is numerous hardships due to the elevation of the excavation going up the driveway. There are steep drop-offs on each side of the driveway. The driveway is roughly 12 feet wide. There is an existing gas line and water line already in the driveway. So it would be very costly to install that sewer line alongside those other two utilities. There would probably need to be sheet piling installed due to the increased elevation compared to the surrounding properties. And then also the existing driveway is it still has a lot of useful life. It's paved, so it would be very costly to replace it. All of these factors were brought in front of the sewer subcommittee, and it was voted that a waiver would be granted.
Any questions, discussion from members of the council on the waiver request? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Madam Clerk, on the matter of item F under reports, the council voted 4-0 to ratify the contractor agreement for the restroom renovation library, and the council voted 4-0 to approve resolution 2024-59 for your records. Thank you. Item B, resolution 2024-61 to create the Coventry Semi-Quincentennial Committee. I can say that, but I can't say executor. Oh, come on. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
I motion.
Motion by Councilman Capaldi, second by Councilman Pasqua. Discussion. Did you want to speak to this?
Only in as much as we're really early on this. It seems like there's a lot of time before we do the actual celebration. But there's a lot of different activities, and I think there's a lot of folks that really like to get involved. This is a kind of a fun, feel-good thing. One of the things we did was have that wooden map restored. I've included a list in working with the folks from planning. So it's sort of a group effort. We can get as many people involved as we can to just come up with some activities to celebrate the town and its place in the colonial history of the country. You know, Nathaniel Green is here. We've got a lot to be proud of here. So this is just a chance for everybody to do their own thing. You know, we're not looking for a committee that's going to run all of this stuff. You know, Nathaniel Green Pain House is going to do some things. We'd like the school park do it, or our own historic preservation folks. I wanted to keep the actual size of a forum as small as possible, so that if I get it, so that, oh my gosh, we have a meeting and not enough people show up, that it's not functional. So I did that intentionally, trying to keep that low so we can just, you know, have a meeting with not only whoever you decide wants to be on it, but whoever wants to.
Any discussion, members of the council? Councilman Capaldi.
I do a lot of large events in my business, which comes with large budgets. So what's the budget for this? You're serious, right? Oh,
We don't have a budget, but you know, we're also a year ahead, so it could be that you decide that there's some things you want to budget. The Secretary of State's office has some things to offer. They've got some display stuff that we can borrow for nothing. They have almost no budget. So there's no budget at the present time, but you're kind of a year and a half away. So you could decide, more than anything, my vision is that we're going to piggyback on some things that you already budgeted. So you've got events that the Rec and Parks Department puts together. Well, let's add a component to that. The school. So we'll do some things with them. I wasn't looking for something that's going to be super expensive. Promotional materials and printing and that sort of thing. Might need some money for that as time goes on.
Councilor Shockley.
I just have a question. First, hopefully we can work with the Recreation Department and have their annual event kind of tie in with this in the year that it happens. And then the composition of the board, I'm kind of thrown by. So you're saying you want it to be representatives of historic societies, different organizations and associations, town staff, and interested residents with membership not to exceed 9 community members. So are you considering town staff, people who live here, community members, or people who are involved in our community members? Okay, so any of these groups you mentioned in the resolution are considered part of the community. Okay, I just was a little confused by that.
Yeah, I mean, the more the merrier, but keep the quorum size small, so they don't go up.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Resolution 2024-63 awarding Green Farm, I'm sorry, I skipped item C. Resolution 2024-62 awarding epoxy pavement markings to Safety Markings LLC, 255 Hancock Avenue, Bridgeport, Connecticut. This is on page 81 in your packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution? Motion by
Second.
Councilman Pasqua, second by Councilmember Shockley. Do I hear any discussion? Anything on this?
Only that this is the same company that has been doing our pavement markings for the last 3 years, and they're doing a great job, and, you know, they provide a good price. So the Public Works Director encourages hiring these.
Got it. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Resolution 2024-63 awarding Green Farm Estates Drainage Improvements Project to City Construction LLC, 130 King Philip Road, Johnston, Rhode Island. This is on pages 82 to 84 in your packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley.
Second,
Second by Councilwoman Capaldi. Discussion. I'm happy to see this resolution before us this evening. This has been an issue in, for many in District 4, in the heart of District 4, for many years at this point now, and it's been an issue that's been on my plate as a council member for the entire time that I've been on the town council since 2021. I look forward to this getting started and getting done expediently and with quality to help those residents. So I thank the town engineer and his team for putting this together and making this recommendation to the council. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua. Councilmember Capaldi.
yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Thank you. And resolution 2024-66, authorizing the formation of the Municipal Fire Commission to make recommendations for the establishment of a Coventry Fire Department. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Motion to,
Motion to approve.
motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second,
second by Councilman Capaldi. Discussion. So, as the author of this resolution, I'd just like to make a couple comments. So in January of this year, we received a presentation from Dynamics, the third-party consultants that the town council 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago, had authorized the expenditure of 65,000 in ARPA dollars to conduct a study to provide recommendations on a path forward. For those who weren't on the council, there was a meeting that we had, I believe it was 2 special meetings, and folks in the audience can shake their noggins around to remind me if I'm wrong, at the request of fire districts, and only that was an item on the agenda concerning those issues, which led to the council then going out for bid, invitation for bid with respect to third-party consultants and a survey and assessment of fire and EMS services. After we got that presentation in January, conversation around fire and EMS stability among this body kind of went silent. In my opinion, I think there's still information that we need to gather for us as a community to make an assessment as to what our next path forward is. This, again, and I appreciate that folks who came to speak publicly understood the nuance of this resolution, that it is not establishing a municipal fire department. It is simply seeking to see what a budget would look like for combining all the departments, and also what an implementation plan would involve. I think that in my time on the council, in between the 2 different councils makeups that I've been a part of, while it's largely stayed pretty much the same for most of it, this has been a body that has wanted to gather as much information as possible to make informed decisions. I think there's the debate on whether this is something that the town should be involved in is not a part of this discussion. I think this is still, the council made a commitment when it decided to spend $65,000 of federal relief dollars on a study. And basically, in my opinion, that was saying that they understood that there was a problem to address. I am open to discussion on any of and all of the parts of the resolution. My intent was that a commission be formed that would provide representation appropriately to all parties that would be involved in a potential merger or municipal department. I'm open to discussion on that makeup. I am absolutely open to discussion and purposely left the year and dates off of the deliverable timeline because I'm open to that discussion. I see policymaking as a process, not as a 0 to 100 destination. So I'm open to feedback on this resolution. If there's bullets up front that folks take great umbrage with, that they want to see deleted, fine. All I'm looking for is information in terms of potentially giving us some guidance on what could be next steps. This isn't just something that could inform adding a department to the town. This could be something where we find out, I don't know, that maybe in fact the town isn't in a place to take on another department, but hey, we just put together a plan collaboratively that could merge all into one district. I'm not saying that's my opinion or not, but my point is you're left with more options and moving in forward progress on an issue that's shown frequent instability over the last many decades. As someone who grew up in West Warwick, this is something I saw frequently throughout my childhood and into adulthood. So that was really the purpose. Quite frankly, just in summary, I've been told by some folks that this would be a piece of cake to put together a department. I've been told by some that this would bankrupt the town. My guess is it's somewhere in the middle. And I just would like that information to be able to make an educated assessment personally. So with that, I'll open up discussion to members of the council, and I am looking forward to your feedback. Thank you. Councilmember Shockley.
Thanks for putting this together. I agree that as a town council, we decided to have a study done. We got that research. it was mentioned earlier that it should be pushed to the next council, but I don't think that government can shut down for 2 months every year because we know new people may be coming in. We kind of have to get started from where we are. I do have questions and probably some things that could be called concerns. But I do like that you just mentioned that we could take some of this research, and if we decide it shouldn't be under the town of Coventry, then we could still see what merging those districts would look like as a financial task. Because it was mentioned in this resolution that Dynamics offered 3 options, but it looks like we're just looking at the one. And I know as a town council, that's the only one probably that could be voted on by this body. So maybe that's the reasoning for that, but I do want to make sure that we're looking at other options while we're doing this, whether it's just to say, we should look at, because I think status quo could mean a lot of different things. Like, I know it means staying separate fire districts, but what could we change within those fire districts to create savings? I also, the January date, I do want to make sure we put the time into this that we need to, because I think we have a tendency to just want change. So we look at what's happening right now. I look at these annual budgets getting rejected. I see the current as bad, but I don't want to assume that being under the town would equal good. I also want to make sure that if we are looking at the town taking on another department, just look at the conversations tonight that we've had. As a town, are we collecting the correct impact fees for all our different departments? We look at a department that's under the town's umbrella, although not financially managed by us, and seeing that there's a lot of back end history that we're just finding out now, even though they're under us. And when I look at the fact that just using my fire district as an example, Central Coventry, there have been years of budget cuts based on the fact that budgets have been rejected. I want to be able to see what the future looks like, because I looked at our budget this year that we created as a town. There's a lot of rebuilding based on past budget cuts. So, I think there's a lot of that has to be looked at by this committee. I feel as if when I look at the breakdown of the committee, I would like to see a lot more finance people. Someone mentioned earlier, maybe people from the board who fit that role. But the actual firefighters themselves, I know you can't have non-union, so it's almost fire department leadership, I guess we'd be looking for this board. I don't know that that's the correct group to be on this board, because they understand their job. They understand they're running a fire department, but knowing what we can cut from upper management in order to manage, in order to get this to be a more fiscally responsible plan, or what we might be able to do with our inventory. Like, a lot of these things are being looked at, but I don't know if it's firefighters that are the best group, or fire department management that's the best group to look at that, or board representation, or even just some regular community members. So I think that's something we need to look at. I heard from a lot of people who told me I was going to vote no. That's not really something that I intend. I want to put together some sort of committee to do this. I just want to make sure that we're making it the right committee and we're asking the right questions. So I know I just said a lot, but that's those are things that I've been looking at.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Councilman Pasco.
Before I make any statements, I want to ask Solicitor Angel, who also helped write this. This resolution on its face, if this passed tonight, does this have any impact on the compensation, negative or positive, to the firefighters in any districts?
No, it does not. And in fact, to address some of what I've heard so far, and to address, if I may, the reason for the town to evaluate a municipal fire department is simply because that's really the only option that's within its realm. Anything else that the council or that this commission may do is nothing more than a mere recommendation to fire districts that, quite frankly, they may or may not want to follow. The focus of the commission really is, by its intent, is to consider a municipal department. There's been some discussion about, why would the finance director, be on it? Why would the manager be on it? Why would the solicitor be on it? I can only speak for the executive officers in this town. We would be the acquirer. We would be the institution into which this group would merge. If we were a private corporation, your CEO, your chief financial officer, and your general counsel would necessarily be there from the get-go to discuss what a merger would look like, because frankly, we know best how it fits into the architecture of finances, operations, and, legal compliance. So, that was the reasoning behind that had been discussed with the town manager and the council president. But this resolution takes a step forward, brings that study that was done forward, to get a work group together among the people who know what's at stake. They know their individual departments, and, hopefully, and I know that there's been discussion about the timeframes. It's a resolution. The timeframes can be extended, but in our collective experience, if you don't have a time horizon, we're just going to sit around and spitball this thing. You need some deadlines in here. If they need to be extended, they get extended, but that's really up to leadership.
So I know there's been some comments in the past that this council wasn't elected to lead fire districts or make any adjustments to the fire districts, but the resolution doesn't seek to do that. It says there's no purpose in this resolution to take over fire districts or dictate how they're managed. What is our responsibility, though, is making sure that 40,000 residents are safe. That's our responsibility. And making sure that when they call 911, they are not waiting for help any longer than they should. So, even recently, we've had districts in this town where they haven't had an ambulance in service for several hours a day or sometimes a whole day. So it's a broken system. And so, the councils were elected, and we're elected by the residents of this town, and they are also, our constituents are also people that are subject to these bills in these districts and the lack of response or what have you. So even though we are not trying to dictate the districts, these people are still subject to problems that they have, and there are responsibilities of our constituents. And these people are paying double for some of the stuff. They're paying for their own solicitors. They're paying for an audit. They're paying for treasurers. We have this stuff already. So, there's the Anthony Fire District in the last 3 years has spent $963,000 in solicitors, treasurers, audits, other ancillary admin costs that we already do. And Central Coventry spent 1.1 million on the same thing. So our constituents are paying a significant amount of money. Another example is the fire districts, all 4 fire districts budget $364,000 for fire chiefs when you need one at 150. So my point being, we need to form this committee. We need to explore this stuff, and this stuff needs to be learned officially. And there are some cost savings, and we also have to blend that in with how do we provide public safety for a rapidly growing population in a fiscally responsible way. And double paying for solicitors and treasurers and auditors and everything is not it. And just to reiterate a sentiment that this is our problem, on March 30th of 2013, Superior Court Judge Brian Stern, after ruling that CCFD was to be closed and liquidated, he quoted, "As a practical matter, it is now unfortunately a town of Coventry's problem." He said this on the record. And April 10th, 2013, previous town council had to loan $300,000 to Central Coventry. And a quote from them was, "We're here tonight to act on an emergency which has presented itself to the town of Coventry that has grave consequences. on what this council considers to be a public health, safety, and welfare issue for the citizens of Coventry. 2 years later, a separate fire district held a public vote, and the residents of that district voted to liquidate that district. Thankfully, that didn't happen and that district stabilized. But you would have had yet another public safety situation, emergency for the town of Coventry 2 years later in a different district. And, you know, I mean, these districts, they've all got their issues. Yeah, they've all got their issues, whether manpower, whether it's funding. Western had a tax increase year before last of 17%, 5.7%, and they're running into their surplus to pay their bills. But at least they were in the last 2 years. We have to form this committee to explore a municipal department. It's the responsible thing to do. We're elected to make decisions as council, and we do it with informed decision and not hyperbole. And doing this is the right thing to do.
Councilman Capaldi.
We can't keep the status quo. We just can't. In accordance with what John just said, I agree with him wholeheartedly. And Solicitor Angel, I really liked your analogy of corporation. I work in corporate America. Anything as significant as this, what we're talking about, would have the CEO, CFO, general counsel around the table because it's their company and they know best on how to manage everything across. Even the littlest things in corporate America, littlest projects, littlest strategies that I try to launch in my 9-to-5 job. We always set up work groups to figure out what are we doing, you know, every aspect of it, from marketing, financials, audience, you know, everything is put on the table, sleeves rolled up, everyone's sitting around figuring out what we need to do. And there's a lot of questions with this. I hear it tonight. I've heard it since I joined the council. And I believe the only way to do it is to form this committee so everyone can roll up their sleeves and get the answers that we need to make a sound and just decision.
Councilor Shockley.
So some of what's been said makes me kind of go back to the idea of having so many people from the fire department on this board. Because I don't want it to be, we want to have the fire districts under the town and let's give information that will provide. I don't want to have a conclusion before I have a committee. So making sure the night that this comes before the council, and it won't come before me, I want it to be the most boring presentation anyone's ever heard in their lives, filled with just numbers and facts from other towns that have done this. And this is how we get the taxes on, you know, we can start rolling the taxes into the state. This is what the town financial picture looks like over the next 5 years. If we take the fire district's 5-year plans into account, you know, I want it to be dull. I don't want it to have anyone's personal feelings on this because they've been living it for the past few years. I think someone from the fire districts should be a part, you know, someone from a professional opinion from the fire department, someone who's similar to what the town solicitor just said, like, we're your board of directors. So maybe that's a fire chief and someone from the board who does their accounting or auditing or something along those lines, the finance director for these for the different boards, or just someone who's on the board who fills that role, you know, has that financial background. But I want it to be dry. Like, I want it to be a boring committee that we're just going through. These are the numbers. These are how the numbers are working now. This is how we feel if we could have a definitive annual tax increase, what we think we would need it to be. So getting the right group of people together, I think, is really important as far as how this resolution goes. You know, for the school building committee, just as an example, we had people involved in that committee who came from the industries in which we were dealing. And so even when it went from we want to do a bond to build a new middle school to we have $25 million. How can we best spend it? It was still a good committee because they were able to take what they were offered and roll with that a bit. So I do want to make sure that this is kind of what you would call a professional committee getting together to make what's going to be a humongous decision for the fire districts and the town as a whole.
Councilman Pasco.
I just want to comment on the makeup of the board as far as firefighters. When we're talking about designing a piece of critical infrastructure that is very technical and is subject to the rules of NFPA, OSHA, the Department of Health, you have to have people that have institutional knowledge about these regulations on this. Because you could spend all of this time designing this. You get a year in and the DOH says, well, are you budgeting for a life pack? Are you budgeting for this? Are you doing that? And everybody on this board, for the most part, doesn't know what you're going at. If you want to build a responsible budget to operate a piece of infrastructure like this, there needs to be institutional knowledge. And Coventry, on an operational scale, is extremely unique in its size and its makeup. You have a rural western part of town, which we need to make sure is safe, and it's a total different technique of firefighting and EMS out there than it is on the eastern side. So you really need some of the institutional knowledge. The boards are fiduciary; they're not operational. They negotiate contracts. They operate the finances of districts, which lately has been better, but in the past hasn't. And so you need the operations side. You need good input from them on this side, and just to protect the town. If you're going to put all this work into it, make sure it's a good work product.
Councilman Capaldi.
As far as the makeup of the committee, we're not, it doesn't say here that you want, I don't know how many people on this committee, 10 people, 10 firefighters. You're saying you need that institutional knowledge to be put in there, which I think is 100% needed. And then you have the rest of the executives of the town that know everything else. I think that's the way, I mean, what you have here, I like. I think it's a good way to put it.
So to that point, I do agree we need professional firefighters on here. I do wonder if we should swap it being union membership to non-union. There's no CBA that's going to be negotiated in this process. So in my opinion, I think that makes sense. I did hear that as feedback from some folks. I'd be curious to hear from others to swap out to two non-union firefighters to represent instead of the union. I am also open to each district sending delegation from their current board of directors. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Solicitor Angel.
I think since firefighters generally in a municipal setting are unionized, and there are collective bargaining agreements in place within the districts, I think it's important that union be at the table.
Yeah.
To discuss, to have a dialogue over what a merger would do to contracts or what their expectations would be, so that the council would know what those expectations would be.
Okay.
That
So you don't.
it's purely a
so I-
policy decision.
Well, so I just want to ask, because it was brought up that it could be a conflict of interest for collective bargaining later. I just want to clarify that.
Look, I mean, we're not bargaining. It's a work group to undertake the study of what a municipal department would look like. And to the voices that I've heard up here tonight, what goes into that, whether it's a life pack or a contract
Mhm.
or whatever the case may be, those are all considerations
Okay.
that
that's
should
fine
have
with me.
that should have a voice that would adequately inform the council along the lines what Councilwoman Shockley spoke about.
So I don't know if folks up here had any additional comments. Councilman Pasco.
As far as non-union situation, when it comes to districts, the Anthony district does not have any professional operational people at this point that are non-union. The chief is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
Central Coventry and Hopkins Hill will also be losing their chief in March, who's the non-union operations guy. Everybody else is union. So that operational component, even just to those two districts, doesn't exist as a certain point. So you will be dealing with board members.
Okay. Does anyone have additional comments? Because I just had some proposed amendments I was going to make. Councilman Capaldi.
How will these committee members be selected?
The town council appointment.
Do we get resumes? I mean, how do we know who these?
Yeah, so obviously some of these, they're sending designees.
Okay.
The council will, obviously there's some that clearly already get a seat. And then each of the districts realistically are sending a designee. We could change it to, instead of non-union designee, to board of directors. That's their choice. So I don't know that there's like a vetting process. They're going to send names. Really the big decision is going to be for the council to decide. It's 2 members it'll be delegating.
So whoever they designate, that we don't vet that. No one vets that.
No.
Okay.
That's the good faith that those bodies are sending who they would like to participate, just as the Municipal Corporation of Coventry is going to send who they would like. So, Councilor Shockley.
Would it make sense to add 1 or 2 board members that are members of the community who have some background in, we can decide, public safety, municipal finance, but aren't part of the Coventry, any of the Coventry fire districts?
I personally wouldn't be in favor, because I think with the 2 town council designees, those are representing the public. If you add 4 board of directors members, they were elected by their own public to represent their interests. If you have, and as the committee is made up now, say give or take the chief of police, you're already at 10 or 11. So to get
Right, I'm
this up
trying to figure out
to
how
get
many
this up to 13 with 2 more members of the public, I think just gets
Too many
way too many
voices?
cooks in the kitchen. I appreciate the thought, but my thought was that, say it's board of directors and then council, that's 6 people who are elected to represent the public on this matter, on this committee. Councilman Pasqua.
The only other recommendation that I would ask for is that, as Solicitor Angel hinted to, having the correct union people represent on this board is important, because you need a number on a CBA. We're not negotiating CBA, or this committee, I should say, it's not going to be negotiating CBA, but you need a general idea to make responsible budget of what it's going to be. And there are really 2 major fire unions in Coventry, not 1. So Hopkins Hill firefighters, as well as the dispatchers, are represented by a different local. So I would ask that the Hopkins Hill local has a representative on the board, and maybe Chief Heiss, it doesn't sit on it. He's got a lot going on. It's a big department that he's running. Maybe that he's replaced by a
Non-voting.
Hopkins.
Or he's a non-voting member.
It could be a non-voting, or
You kind of want the chief of police to be in the loop on something like this as your EMA person, public safety director.
yeah, I could go with that. And then, yeah, I mean, non-voting member, just to keep it so it's an odd number. But I think that if we really want to do good homework on this and put the right numbers together, they need a seat at the table as well.
Okay. Any further discussion before I propose some amendments here to item 2? Okay, so based on feedback, my recommendation for proposed amendment would be line 55 to remove Chief of the Coventry Police. On line 56, keep 1 designee from the International Association of Firefighters Local 3372 and 1 and then add 1 designee from, and what's the local number on Hopkins Hill? And 1 designee from IFF Local 4824. And then I would change it and one board of directors designee from each of the 4 fire districts. I'd change on line 57. And then on line 59, I would add the chief of the Coventry Police Department shall sit on the committee as a non-voting member. Do I hear a motion to approve the amendment?
Make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
I'd now like to turn the council's discussion on the resolution as amended to lines or the sections 6 and 7, I'm sorry, 6 and 8, the ones that deal with the date. I'd like to hear feedback from the council on what they think would be the appropriate timeline for a deliverable. Is it November of 25 and then January of 26? Is it, July 1 of 25 and sometime in the fall of 25? Like, I would just like some feedback on what we think is appropriate time. Councilor Shockley.
When do we expect to have this board seated?
That's a good question. It's given the fact that it's all people sending designees, it'll probably be, I'd say before the first meeting in October or by the first meeting in October.
So if we'd planned on having feedback by January, I think that should be where we're asking for something. Like, I don't think this should be done in January, but it might be a good time for the first deliverable.
Wait. I'm
So
confused.
we're looking for this group to get together. I mean, I think so far, the first deliverable might be, this is our scope of work. This is what we plan on researching in order to come with a proposal.
So you think that what's outlined as the scope of work in section 5 is not the same as that?
I think that I would want to see this group that we've put together, their input as far as what they feel the scope of work should be. Because I feel like it's probably broader than this. I think we've decided to put together 11 people from different.
Solicitor Angel.
So, it's line 67. The resolution provides some guideline as to the minimum that the group should consider, the recommendations in the form of an implementation plan shall includes, but is not limited to the following elements. So they can certainly say, hey, you guys left out whatever and include it, or come back and tell the council that I'll just pick a letter and say that, K, we're not going to do K. So however you want to do it, but I think it's important, to Councilwoman Shockley's point, that the council not direct the work product of the commission, because they're going to meet and there'll be things that come up during the course of the meeting that nobody sitting here tonight or in the audience thought about.
So to that end, I don't know if you wanted to amend line 92 to read, the commission shall deliver its recommended scope of work to the town council no later than its last meeting in January 2025.
I think that's a possible amendment. And then I also wonder, do we want a regular delivery schedule based on the fact that we're not giving them, as you mentioned, an exact timeline of when we want?
No, I still think there needs to be a date where they need to deliver a final work product for sure. I think the council's within its bounds to ask for periodic updates, whether it's every other month or whatever it might be, from this commission on where things stand and what they still have to do. But if we don't set a date, this thing will drag on. Councilman Capaldi.
I just want to, we're talking about the holiday season, is coming up, and I don't know what all these people on this council, they go away. I mean, it's going to be a very busy time. Why don't we say Q1 of 2025 to have this first deliverable? I don't know.
I personally would rather give them, like, we know we meet the second and last Tuesday
Do
of the month.
do you, John, Councilman Pasqua, sorry. Do you think this all can be done within a couple of months?
Councilman Pasqua.
My recommendation would be town fiscal year starts July 1. Let's aim for a final work product for July 1 of 25. And until then, monthly updates, at least one council meeting per month of where this commission is or what they're doing to make sure they're not stagnant, keep an eye on them. So monthly updates, final work product July 1, that gives us 12 months to prepare for the fiscal impact of the 26 budget. 27 budget for when we would have municipal.
And I think we also could note that if this commission doesn't feel like it's gonna have a quality work product to us by July of 25, they'll tell us and say, we'll have it to you for this time. So obviously a resolution is not this like signed in blood document, but it's the council's expectation.
If I may, I think it's, the cycle that we get on for budget introductions and things that have budget impacts. If we have something that's due at the beginning of a fiscal year, then you've missed a whole budget season.
He's saying July 1 of 25, and then you have a whole year before you start the budget process in December, January.
Yeah, so the end of next year, we could be.
This
if we
is
had
saying,
to work
this
into
is
it.
saying July 1, 2026, FY 27. start.
Which you can do, just, in some ways it's almost too long. Like there's so much that can change. So you could start to look at something in the beginning of your process, because the whole thing's going to be dynamic as you go along anyway. So you could start to look at something in the beginning of your analysis process that's now changed. I'm just saying, be leery of that, because you could end up with so many changes in personnel and
I get that, but
situation.
methinks that we're not gonna have all 3 outstanding audits done before December. Sorry, Bob. I just know that we're gonna wanna have those in a solid place when it comes to making that when this product comes before the council to decide where it wants to go next. So I think it's important that be factored into the timeline consideration for completion of.
And that makes sense. I mean, I worked with the folks from Dynamics when they were going through and, doing, more than anything, help them with logistics and getting all of the fiscal issues together for them to be able to look at them didn't happen in some instances didn't happen in a timely manner. Like it took a lot of coaching and encouraging to get one of the departments to provide their numbers. So factor that in, how easily you're going to be able to get some of the financial data.
So, couple of things. I have an eye towards revising 6. I heard someone throw out the town council meeting in July as the deliverable date. I'm amenable to that. I think this is one of those things where however long you give it is how long it's going to take. So I'd be amenable to making an amendment to item 6, lines 92 and 93 to read: the commission shall deliver its recommendations to the town council no later than its July regularly scheduled meeting. Councilman Pasqua.
I think some definition needs to be made to the word recommendations. Recommendation of what? Recommendation of implementation of the municipal fire plan, recommendation that
or it's deliverable. The commission shall deliver its shall provide its deliverables, its deliverable to the town council later than its meeting, last meeting. June. So the proposed amendment then would be lines 92-93. The commission shall provide its deliverable to the town council no later than the July regularly scheduled town council meeting. It
Should
would
we
only
put
be
2025?
2020 July 2025. Yeah, we will only meet once in July. Any motion for that?
Make the motion.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Any discussion on the amendment? Councilor Shockley.
No, I just wanted to say I support that date because A, it can be fluid, and B, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion and work to be done after that deliverable is met. So
Any further discussion? Councilor Shockley.
I don't know that this should be added, but should we have something in here that states that there will be, if the council asks for a date after that July meeting, to have a representative from this committee come back before the council to answer questions. I think that the deliverable is a great thing to put into the timeline, but then I think there's going to be a lot of council discussion and questions after that fact, and maybe there should be not a mandatory meeting after, but that someone from this commission would come back to, answer questions and help to get us to a place where, I don't know if the deliverable being provided is the same as the council voting.
Right.
So I wouldn't want that to
No,
be the
no.
same timeline. So before council votes on this, there'd be the opportunity for the committee to come back one more time to answer any questions that may be had.
I'm happy to also consider if we can wait outside this amendment. I think it would be appropriate to alter the language in item 8 now. That's kind of become obsolete given our change in item 6. So just to keep procedurally things tight, if that's okay with you, Councilmember Shockley, finishing out this amendment procedurally and then moving to 8 to articulate kind of things like they should come back monthly with reports. They should return after making their presentation. kind
Yeah,
of a thing.
that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Any further discussion on the amendment to lines 92 and 93? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
So on item 8, I think we can pretty much rewrite completely to something to the effect of the representative from the commission shall make themselves available to give monthly updates to the town council and be made available for additional questions and feedback after delivery of the work product. Does that sound okay? Do we have any motion for that one? Motion to approve the amendment
I'll second
by
it.
Councilman Pasqua, second by Councilmember Shockley. Discussion on the amendment. Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Lastly, in the spirit of collaboration, I would like to make an amendment because many people got very upset with this line, and to me, it does not change the intent of the resolution by removing it, but lines 35 and 36, I'd like to amend to strike from the resolution. I don't know if I have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley. Second by Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
And we're now back to the resolution as amended. Is there any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
We will now move on to ordinances. Item A, first reading of ordinance number 2024-4, amendment of chapter 255 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Coventry entitled zoning. Solicitor Angel,
That's being withdrawn on procedural grounds. It'll be reintroduced next month.
thank you. We will now move on to public comment for undocketed items, those items that were not on our agenda this evening. If you have a public comment on undocketed items, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Any public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand to be let in and unmute yourself. Public comment on undocketed items, those items not on our agenda this evening. Going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment on undocketed items is now closed. Moving on to introduction of new matters before the council. Item A, approval of Narragansett Electric to be granted permission to locate and maintain conduit wires and fixtures, including the necessary sustain and protecting fixtures to be owned by your petitioner across the following public ways. A, Flat River Road, install P669-84 with 6-foot anchor. B, Flat River Road, install P660-84 with 10-foot anchor. Install P658-84 with 6-foot anchor. Install P657-84 with 8-foot anchor. Item C, Poor Farm Road, installing P30-50, 40-foot east from existing P4 and an anchor guide with 5-foot lead to property line. Installing P4-84 with an anchor guide, remove tree guide going into customer property. Do I hear a motion to grant the permission?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilor Shockley,
A second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Discussion. Manager Broadbent, any comments?
No.
Okay. Any discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua. Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
At this time, we will take a motion to go into executive session for the following. A, executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A2. That's the exception for all of our items this evening. Litigation matters v. Social Holdings LLC v. Town of Coventry. Executive or closed session on litigation matters re Town of Coventry, notice of violation, dam number 176. And litigation matters re Nicholas E. Cambio, trustee and others versus Commerce Park Realty. And executive closed session on discussion of prospective litigation to be initiated by the town. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
Make a motion.
Motion by Councilor Shockley,
Second.
second by Councilor Capaldi. All those in favor, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua. Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley.
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
We will now go into executive session.
Exactly.
That's all right. We have a quorum. At this time, I will take a motion to come out of executive session. Motion by Councilman
Second.
Pasqua, second by Councilor Shockley. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
He says yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
3 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Sorry, Mike, I think I appointed Mike. I don't know.
I will now seek a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Shockley, second by Councilman Pasqua. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes.
3 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Members of the public, the council met in executive session to discuss the 4 items listed on the agenda. A discussion was had, no votes were taken. At this time, I'll seek a motion to adjourn at 9:54 PM.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley,
Second.
second by Councilman Pasqua. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Chair votes aye. We stand adjourned.
Where did it actually go?
Why, where's it going?
I don't know. I just.